Meeting will come to order. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Newburgh Board of Education. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Thomasina Bello.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
Roll call.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Here.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Here.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Here.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Here.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Here.
Mr. DeRay.
Present.
Mr. Howard.
Here.
Ms. Politi.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session. Can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Executive session. Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. DeRay.
No.
Mr. Howard.
No.
Ms. Politi.
No.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes.
That item passes.
A point of order. Point of order. There is no purpose stated as to why you were voting to go into executive session.
Would you like me to read it, ma'am? Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matters leading to the employment of particular employees, employment history of employees or corporations, and to obtain advice from legal counsel.
Please understand that we are here to hold each other up, not to tear each other apart. Order. We may not always agree, but it's important to be respectful when we don't. Keep in mind that your words will be heard by many, but most importantly, by our scholars. Please set a good example. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to read the statement, please. I would like to take this moment to express my appreciation to everyone who made it their business to attend this meeting despite their busy schedules. Your voices are invaluable, and it's clear that everyone present understands their importance. As a board elected to represent the entire district, we have a responsibility to consider how our decisions affect each member of this community. It's crucial that we actively seek out and prioritize the feelings and opinions of all constituents. As elected officials, we must promote the well-being of the Newburgh and Large City School District. Engaging with our community is essential, not just during election periods, but as an ongoing commitment. We must continue to listen with respect and thoughtfully consider public opinion in all of our decision-making. That being said, I propose that this board consider suspending the rules to allow everyone who has signed up to speak to share their thoughts. If we cannot do this today, I encourage all of you to reflect on the importance of respectful engagement as we approach the upcoming elections in May. Thank you very much. I would like to put a motion on the floor, Madam President, that we allow all who have signed up to speak tonight.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Roll call to allow all people who signed up to speak. Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
No.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
No.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. DeRay.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
No.
Ms. Christine Bello.
No.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
No.
That motion fails.
So, Madam President, I need to be clear. So, understanding where we are right now, what has transpired and what's going on in this district, we have individuals who have come here to let us hear their voice. And we have decided, please don't gavel me because I'm talking. We have decided as a board not to hear our constituents and what their concerns are. And we feel good about that. And we continually say our constituents, our community, total transparency. How can you quell the voices of the community in that manner? I'm totally confused, Madam President.
The people that do not, we have a very hefty agenda ahead of us, okay? The people that do not make it to speak within the time frame are able to email the board members right at the district. Moving on.
Excuse me.
Mr. DeRay.
The people in the audience are not a surprise. That's why we're sitting in this building tonight. We knew how many people were going to show up in support of the community. So to say we have a busy agenda, which you put numerous items on tonight, which you could have adjusted, is kind of a false flag. We've had 2 special meetings in the last couple of weeks, and in review, there was nothing that happened at those special meetings that couldn't have happened at a regular meeting. But what did occur at the special meetings was, the first one had no public present. The second one last week had a huge public presence, which we ignored. So the question becomes, how long are you going to look physically at the community and disregard their input?
Mr. Bugarelli.
Thank you. So earlier this year, and late last year, I imagine, I don't remember exactly what happened, you wanted to bring these meetings to different schools in the district in order to hear more people's voices. You wanted to move the meetings to 7 p.m. to hear more people's voices. We have more people here that want to speak, yet you're going to deny them the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Go ahead, Matthew.
The board president has requested I read the following excerpt from policy 1230. Public comment at board meetings. All speakers and observers must conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene language, defamatory statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. Any speaker who is unable to speak at the podium tonight can email the Board of Education members at boemembers@necsd.net with their concerns.
Please call our first speaker.
The first person signed up to speak on agenda items is Miss Maggie Welling.
Is this on? Not on? The mic's not on.
Don't start her time.
Yeah, don't start my time. The mic is not on.
Gavel, the mic will come on.
I mean, I can talk. I have a big mouth.
No, we want to hear you in the
My
back.
Long Island will come out real fast.
Central Iceland,
Brentwood.
Brentwood, Al. You should gavel for the mic to come on. Yeah, maybe if she hits the big like that.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? This is my 24th and final year of being a parent in this district. My oldest 3 and my youngest will graduate, in June, will walk across Academy Field. 24 years I have been in this district. While I'm not a go-back myself, I do have largely positive opinions of this district. This district hired a superintendent to clean up a previous superintendent's messes and better our schools, but some members of the board tied her hands while attempting to clean it up. While we were paying the previous superintendent's salary, we were also paying this superintendent's salary. And now, are we going to pay for another 2 superintendents again? How is that fiscally responsible? How many more superintendents will certain members of the board allow on Newburgh School District's payroll? And speaking of that, how does suspending Dr. Manning, who is more educated and qualified than anybody else in this room, what does she have to do with a budget that New York State just gave us a budget and we passed it? Do certain members of the board think that people cannot see how thinly veiled this is? Are you afraid of an educated black woman? And why do all the taxpayers, whether parents in this district or not, they are taxpayers, why do they not know about this investigation? And how can there have been an investigation that leads to a suspension in like minutes? Like, when was this decided, investigated? The deep state's in the district. And didn't we discuss an extra audit already earlier in this school year? Have anybody Googled the word audit? Maybe start there. Who is also paying for this next audit? How will my taxes be affected by an extra audit? And if I run for the board, can I undo everything that everyone does at the drop of a hat?
Yes, you can.
I have more, but that's going to go on non-agenda. I'm not done. Thank you. My shirt, little Tribe Called Quest, a little end racism. I have 2 minutes. I will yield my time to the next person.
The next person signed up to speak on agenda items is Ms. Dawn Fuchek.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Dawn Fuchek, and I live in the town of Newburgh. I'd like to address agenda item 6.14. I'm unclear on the need for the proposed change to this policy. The only modification pertains to Section 8, Number 2, regarding consultants. Currently, the policy states that no board member may serve as a consultant or employee for the district for at least 1 year after leaving office. The proposed change extends this period to 3 years. It's worth noting that this 3-year restriction is not a recommendation from NYSBA's policy services, nor is it a standard practice in any of our neighboring school districts. This district has always valued educator voices on the school board, and as you are aware, there is a significant shortage of teachers and administrators. Adopting this change would only worsen that problem. So what is the motive behind this change?
Christine, is it a way we... It's hard to hear. Can we turn it up, or...
Our technicians in the back, if you can move the mic to the front of the stand or
Stop the time.
increase the volume.
Stop the time to allow more people to speak.
The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Mark Levenstein.
Oh, no. You're good. Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Mark Levenstein, and I live in the town of Newburgh, and I would like to comment on the president's items on tonight's agenda. I attend most meetings, and on the president's section, it seems that we often revisit the same issues. Month after month, the same items from their handlers keep reappearing to continue their revenge tour, which have very little positive impact on the students of the district. The majority board members tend to emphasize problems and negativity rather than pointing out the opportunities students have in this district. They do not express a desire to help, support, or protect the students, families, and the district. You would think that it would have been the reason that they ran for this position. There is an opportunity for growth and improvement, and it is important that the school board, along with central office, work together and focus on constructive discussions to fulfill the responsibilities for which you were elected.
The next person signed up to speak is Ms. Sade Burks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sade Burks. Can y'all hear me now? Can y'all hear me now? All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sade Burks. I'm a resident and a parent of the city of the Newburgh and Large City School District. I am here to speak on item 6.3, if I'm not mistaken, the cause for the forensic audit. We do a regular audit every year, so why are we calling for another audit? And again, who's paying for this audit? At a couple of maybe about 2 board meetings ago, we had one board member state that he didn't find anything that would call for a forensic audit, but still we're doing an extra forensic audit. Then we had the lawyer say that another audit would cost over $10,000. When the new board members ran on, they ran and said they were running to save this community money. What money are we saving if we're causing taxpayers an extra $10,000 when we have a regular audit coming up? I'm also here to speak about the superintendent. What reason was there to suspend her? There's no reasons listed on suspending her. Yes, people say this information was put out to the public before it was supposed to be put on public agenda, but that's no different from earlier in meetings when I spoke about information being leaked to board members' parents. So what's the difference now if information was leaked? How do we conduct the district if the people don't know what's going on? If we suspend this superintendent and if we fire her, we are now paying her 3 years of salary plus another superintendent 3 years of salary. You 5 board members came on and said you were going to save the district money. So how are you saving the district money when we're paying for a superintendent that you guys want to fire 3 years, then we're going to bring in another superintendent and pay them 3 years? That's double. Might I add, we're going to be paying 2 superintendents, and then didn't your lawyer advise you that you're setting this district up for legal litigation? So if she sues the district, not only will we be paying her a hefty amount for the next 2 years, we'll also be paying her a lawsuit. So how are you saving this district money? How does this affect the children of this district? Yep. You're pulling money out of the taxpayers' pockets. We are already dealing with the housing crisis in the city of Newburgh. So now we're going to have to pay extra? I encourage you, instead of trying to fire the superintendent, where we would have to pay her double, worry about your students in the district, where half of them are living in the Ramada Inn, are up on 9W because they are homeless. So now you're going to pour more money out their pocket to pay this superintendent. Where's the concern for the children? But again, we know the 5 of you are up there for personal vendettas. Amen. Good night.
The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Dennis Grant.
Good evening. Which one?
Good evening, Dennis Grant, City of Newburgh. Your clear choice coalition hasn't or wasn't to govern the best for our students. No. Your coalition was to be part of this systematic bullying of the teachers union executive administration. I never liked bullies. I always stand up to bullies. Our district is entrenched with this systemic bullying from, I repeat, Teachers Union Executive Administration. I call the 5 of you out for your cowardly demeanor and anyone else who supports this cowardly display.
Coward.
Oh, and it's the teachers' contract time, everybody. And the teachers' executive administration is playing dirty to remove our superintendent so the union can steamroll negotiations and get a sweet deal. I'm pro-union, but this is no bueno. For the abstention 5, here and anyone affiliated to them, never talk about test scores and graduation rates because that is empty rhetoric. And if anyone agrees to this foolery, you are part of the problem. You have been lied to, and when our school district fails and falls short, don't complain because you have contributed to this mediocrity. And to the taxpayers in our school district that agree with this superintendent suspension coup and the other mess that is coming around the corner, you are supporters of domestic educational extremists. To the good teachers and administrators in this district, and you know who you are, keep up the fight. Collectively stand up to the bullies of this district and make your united front and remove your toxic leaders. Witch hunt? No. This is a competency hunt. These seats you sit in are not perches where you gossip about sensitive issues pertaining to our scholars. No, I'm not reaching out to your humanity in you 5. Only God and your mothers know where that is. But I'm reaching to the duty you swore to uphold. The Clear Choice Coalition was never about transparency movement, but shadowy acts. Never about honesty, but cruelty. Never about students and their performance to improve, but mastering the school district with the mindset of owning someone's worth, their value, and their leadership to our district with unproductive overseeing deeds. I asked before if any of you, abstention 5, received the Board of Education the training, so you may not only learn the position you were sworn into by choice, but having temperance to thwart your coalition righteous ambition. It appears that is the only ambition that is thriving here in this district. Not this board thriving towards better test scores and improved math and reading levels, but by the school board teaching the superintendent a lesson and removing her from her earned position appears to be the thriving aim. You swore to be servants to all in these positions, not to your powerless squabble. Your raids dysfunction ought not plague this district in the way it has. So, do you know that removing this superintendent educational plan completely changes our children's direction in our district? So, do you know as board members that the superintendent/school district learning is not working for our kids? Do you know that? Or do you know that the old guard in this school district is just not happy? The behind-the-scenes teachers union leadership is not happy. After all, it's contract time for the teachers, and probably most of all, Mommy Dearest is not happy. So don't make these hasteful moves and then lead us to patience. Leaving this district incompetent will be your legacy. Don't coy as victims in your acts. Because if you push this farther and lawsuits arise, don't be surprised and give weak justifications. And don't present a new answer that is not better than what we have in this administration and our superintendent now just because you like them. What is your end game?
The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Torrance Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Dr. Torrance Robinson. I live in the town of New Windsor. I have godchildren, nieces, nephews, and a daughter working in this district. And I'm here today because I'm confused by some things. I recently went to a meeting similar to this at the other building, and immediately after 10 minutes you called into executive session. A large group of the community members and myself sat for 2 hours waiting to give input to what you were doing, only to find out that when you came out of the meeting, you had suspended the superintendent, and we have no explanation as to why she's not here. You talk about confidentiality, you talk about due process, but in America, you are innocent until proven guilty. I think that someone should have had some type of conversations with the superintendent before suspending her. There's no paper trail, no due process there. There's no discussion about what she was doing wrong. If she was doing something wrong, someone should have called her in and discussed it, documented it, both parties signed. That's how we worked in New York City. I'm a former educator. I'm a retired principal, assistant principal, district math coordinator, and doctoral candidate at Manhattanville University. I know what I'm talking about. And I've dealt with unions. I love unions. But what I can't understand is how a few people manipulate the power of an entire district. And I'm also confused, and I need to talk to Dr. Betty Rose about this. I'm also confused how two sets of family members can sit on the board and vote as a block all the time. I'm really confused by that. And so there's a lot that needs to be explained to the community. There's a lot that a lot of us don't understand. But fairness and justice, let justice run down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I think that justice is what we're after. We're not being disrespectful. We're frustrated. We don't understand what's going on. And part of our training in executive leadership at the doctoral level is to find out how to address a community that is frustrated. And what we were taught was this, that you engage them in conversation. You find some common ground so that we don't have these frustrating meetings, but everything is done transparently. We do not believe, from what I've seen in my short time coming to these meetings, that things have been transparent. Now, this coalition of 5 that I keep hearing about, this clear choice coalition, is 5 people who vote as a block on every single thing that you do. I happen to know personally that every program and plan that the superintendent has put forward, the 5 have voted them down. How do you expect her to achieve her goals when you vote down all of her plans and programs? I can't believe, as an educator, that any board of education would vote down professional development for the teachers. I can't believe that any board of education would do things that don't lift children but harm children through the teachers. It starts at the top and it works down. I think that this community, all of us, deserve an explanation as to how this Board of Education handles our superintendents and her cabinet. You can't give me a job to do and then tie my hands and then hold me accountable. I believe that from what I've seen in my discussions is that the superintendent's hands have been tied. So apparently you suspended her for something that she did wrong, but we don't know, and she doesn't even know why she's suspended. That's the thing that blew my mind. And listen, I don't mind telling you, I call people. I pay taxes. You were hired for my district. I want to know what's up with you. So I call and I find out. So for me to call someone and they not know why they were suspended doesn't sound right to me. Something is wrong. And so I implore you to please reconsider your actions and reinstate Dr. Manning Campbell. I'm going to say one other thing as I take my seat. I know the quality of the individual you called as your superintendent, hired as your superintendent. I sat next to her for 3 years in the doctoral program at St. John Fisher University. University. She is very qualified to do the job and the work that she's been assigned to. But I'm puzzled by people that do not have her love of education critiquing her. That bothers me. 10 seconds, I'll give back.
The next person signed up to speak is Miss Tracy Wallace. You have the floor, Miss Wallace.
Where is she? She didn't give her.
Hello? Oh, thank you. Okay. I'd like to talk about 6.3, the forensic audit. I'd like to understand why a New York State regular audit that was required, was done. I don't understand the difference between the need for the forensic audit. I would just like some explanation as a community person. I'm not a board person or an admin, and I know during executive you talk about many things. So it would just help if we had a little more clarity as for the need for the forensic audit. 6.9 I'd like to talk about. Budget transfers. Let me refer to 6.9. All transfers in excess of 200,000. In this, you're deciding to cut 200,000. So all transfers in excess of 50,000, you're trying to change it to require the Board of Education's approval. The superintendent will report any transfers to the board as an information item. So I do remember this, that Assistant Superintendent did speak about that this would stop a lot of the admin from being able to do their job with the students if the number was reduced from 200,000 to 50,000. This is a big district, and so if all of these approvals need to be approved by the board, I would just like some clarity on how much does this affect the admin and their ability to run the schools with programs if they have to run by everything that's under 50,000. You're trying to change it from 200,000 to 50,000. The assistant superintendent has stated several times about how this would affect their ability to, there's many, many things that they need approvals of, and how this would greatly affect the administration from doing their job. So my question is, another question is, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the board either, but my confusion is this is brought up when the superintendent is not here. And I've learned a lot from the superintendent. I'm at most meetings, and the superintendent voices her concerns on anything that she, comments on. And this is on here, and she's not here to fend for her administration. And so I question the numerous state education laws under the board president, and because the superintendent is not here. So I don't know the intent of the board president in having all of these word changes in the many, many New York State education laws that are on here, including 6.10, New York State policy number 6700, purchasing, changing shall to will, crossing out E-rate. I don't understand what that means. 6.12, New York State education law policy 2230, special meetings, has a lot of things added in blue. There's a lot of red markings and blue markings that just so much added and changing. And these are New York State legislative, I read them, and I believe that at a district level, there are certain things you can't change on the New York State policy levels. I'm questioning the district's level at trying to change New York State policy levels. And again, with the absence of the superintendent to then fend for her administration and to defend against the district level trying to change New York State education levels, I'm questioning the legalities of the decisions that are on your policies. Again, 6.13, please discuss the many changes in the voting policy on 2120. This voting policy, there's a lot added. My question is the sex offender policy changing that's on here due to the fact that the parolees are affecting the voting policy, and are the voting policies changing because their board members are running? I'm questioning why there are so many changes to these policies. And again, in absence of our superintendent to defend the students, the administration, and what's right. And that's all I have to say.
The next person signed up to speak on agenda items is Ms. Starla Burks.
Good evening. Is it this one?
Good evening, everyone. My name is, you heard my name. I'm a community member, but outside, community member isn't my only title. I am a concerned parent about this district. So I'm standing here today for the agenda item concerning the superintendent. As a concerned parent, invested in the well-being of families and children in this district. It has been distressing to witness recent actions from a group of newly elected board members that seem to be creating an atmosphere of division and discord. This behavior raises concerns about how it may impact the very students we all strive to support and uplift. I'm particularly troubled by the serious allegations being made against our superintendent, allegations that I believe will not hold up under scrutiny. Our focus should always be on fostering collaboration and ensuring that our children's educational and emotional needs are met. It is disheartening to see actions that could divert us from these crucial goals. The progress our superintendent has worked tirelessly to achieve is vital for the families and children in our district, and it deserves our collective support. I understand that the board president and many other members may not have children currently attending schools within the district, which could distance them from the everyday experiences of our families. Every board member needs to be attuned to the needs of our students and families, as this passion for our community is what can truly guide our decisions. Let us remember that our district is a place for nurturing education, mutual respect, and community strength. We must prioritize the needs of our children above all else, and I genuinely urge those who are involved to step back and reconsider the impact of their actions. Transparency was a platform for many of you, yet it feels like this is a disconnect from those ideals. I encourage open dialogue and engagement rather than meeting behind closed doors, which could further alienate our community. Family members serving on the board must strive for impartiality, and I appeal to those with personal ties to consider the importance of maintaining integrity in their decisions. The focus should be on creating a supportive environment for our students where collective efforts work toward their bright futures. These distractions we've seen recently are not conducive to the nurturing environment our children deserve. Our superintendent has shown unwavering commitment to our district, and it is essential that we support our leadership rather than diminish it with unfounded claims. Let's work together to restore the trust of families and advocate for these children's education and well-being. I urge the board to recall the reason for their election, to serve our community, cherish our students, and build on the progress made thus far. Our children are watching, and they deserve leaders who embody compassion, respect, and collaboration. Let's unite our efforts to create a positive and enriching experience for every student in our district. I have a minute, so I'm not going to say that. But it's disheartening, because I've been here from the day you guys were voted in. And every meeting has always been about either an audit, a budget, money. I'm not sure if you guys understand that it takes money, and it's a large amount of money. And if you're a business owner, as some of you proclaim to be, you will notice that, yes, extra funds do come in. Maybe some funds are used for other things. Nothing is ever misplaced when you're a business owner. You cannot account for every dime because you can't calculate what's always coming in. So let's just be mindful that never once have I come to these meetings and my son, has been discussed. Everything that can empower him and push him, you guys, like they said, have voted down. Hiring, the reading programs, everything, the coaching, the staffing, everything has always been an issue. But never once have you considered a student. What would it take for you to go to these schools and engage with these students and see the damage that you're causing? Personal vendettas are that of your choice. All of us did not vote this board in, so I wish everybody would stop saying that. All of us did not vote this board in, but this is what we have, and we want to work with you, but we can't work with you when you're hiding behind a keyboard, when you put on your mask and you come and stand before us and be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Enough is enough. If you're going to show up, and show up with transparency that you're asking us for, but you don't want to give. Have a good evening.
The 30-minute time limit for agenda items has expired. We will move on to non-agenda items. The first person signed up to speak on non-agenda items is Ms. Dawn Fuchek.
Point of order. 30 minutes total time, or the 5 minutes for each speaker, where some of them did not use their 5 minutes? Can I get clarification on that?
The 30 minutes is adding up everybody that speak at the podium.
So when someone speaks for 2 minutes?
I wrote down 2 minutes, yeah.
So we're at a total of 30 now?
That would be correct, sir.
Thank you.
Can we reclaim our time?
No.
The first person signed up to speak on non-agenda items would be Ms. Dawn Fuchek.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Fuchek. I'm a resident of the town of Newburgh. I'm deeply concerned about the actions of some board members of this board. The board is notably inexperienced, and I question the sources of your advice. Your recent decision has potentially placed this district at a significant risk of liability for not just hundreds of thousands of dollars, but potentially millions. What is your plan in the interim? You have yet to share with this community or even the employees of this district who will be the acting superintendent in the absence of Dr. Manning Campbell. Where is that resolution? You often speak of fiscal responsibility, yet this decision was anything but fiscally responsible. It is clear from your actions that there is a lack of training and understanding regarding the roles and responsibilities of board members. Month after month, I've watched you struggle through these meetings with no plan, no foresight, or evident knowledge of what you are doing. This board lacks vision, clear goals, and direction. It displays none of the qualities of a highly effective governance team. And who pays the price for this? Our children. Not once have I heard or seen an engaging conversation on how we are collectively addressing the diverse needs of our students. Our graduation rates and reading scores remain below where they need to be, yet I see no evidence that this board is reviewing data to evaluate whether current programs are meeting the diverse needs of our students. What improvement plans have you monitored? What reports have you requested to ensure that these plans are effective? Providing oversight in these areas is the board's responsibility, but I have seen no such efforts. As a board, you are supposed to collaborate with the superintendent. You are part of a governance team. You are a team working together for the success of this district and its students. Instead, all I've witnessed is infighting and power struggles over control and decisions that are seemingly driven by revenge or retaliation, either on your behalf or on the behalf of others that have come before you. I know you are being told differently, but let me be clear. The board does not run the district. The board's role is to ensure that the district is being run properly through appropriate oversight. Right now, you are failing our children. If you cannot fulfill your responsibilities effectively, then it's time to step aside. Your inability to govern appropriately continues to come at the expense of our children and the taxpayers of this district. I sincerely hope your decision to suspend the superintendent was based on sound legal advice and solid evidence, because if it wasn't, this could become the most costly decision this district has ever faced, and our taxpayers will bear the burden.
The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Mark Levenstein.
My name is Mark Levenstein, and I live in the town of Newburgh. I wish to speak to you about a couple of items. First, the mass abstaining of voting by board members. I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Dennis Grant's speech last week, but we'll go a little further. At the December 10th meeting, the majority of board members abstain on a vote for an on-call substitute teacher aide. Imagine an on-call substitute teacher aide, and they could not make that decision. They cited a conflict of interest. Not sure where that came from. I am not suggesting which way they should have voted, but they should have voted yes or no. These board members were put in positions by residents to represent them by voting on the issues. How are these board members going to make important decisions at budget time if they felt they had to abstain from this simple decision? Did I abstain from voting when I was on the board? Yes, I did. Numerous times when my wife was up for a different position with the district, I explained why I pulled out a person from the HR agenda, and I abstained. But when the money from the state was slashed and layoffs were imminent, I did not abstain from voting for her being laid off. Tough, non-emotional, non-personal decisions need to be made in your position. Now I would like to talk about the present situation. From what I can gather from public information, it seems that the majority Board of Education members have again followed their handlers' instructions and have felt it necessary to suspend and investigate the superintendent. My comment is simple. For anyone who thinks the $250,000 settlement to the previous superintendent for one board member's bad board behavior was upsetting, you will be much more upset when this situation plays out. The 5 majority board members have opened this district up for multiple very large lawsuits and settlements. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Ms. Sade Burks.
Good evening. My name is Sade Burks, resident and parent of the Newburgh and Lark City School District. I wanted to know why the president of the Christian Ministerial Fellowship was denied her right to speak tonight. Not only has she done countless work for this community, she's involved in this community with the children of this community and multiple churches of this community. I understand that in order to speak at the board meeting, you must be either a parent of the district or you must live in the district. But may I remind you, on a meeting in early summer, we had the board president approved an ex-employee who was fired for inappropriate conduct with children who does not live in the district, invited him to speak at this very podium. Where is your concern for the children of this district? We have a lot of teachers and parents. I get emails, I get calls from teachers and parents that ask me to come and advocate for them. One reason why these teachers and parents do not want to come up and speak, because they are afraid of retaliation, as another resident of the community just spoke. And I understand what they're saying because I am in those shoes. At a board meeting, I got a little emotional and I spoke inappropriately. I came back to the next board meeting and apologized wholeheartedly. And then when I applied for a job for the district, I was voted down. Well, not voted down. 5 board members abstained from voting for me. Where is the grace that you show? Because we currently have a teacher in the audience that was suspended in 2020 for making a comment to her students because they stole her bottle of water. You know, the world already thinks that black and brown children do is steal and have babies and sell drugs. That teacher was voted back in. She's sitting right in the audience. Where was the grace for me? We currently have a board member sitting up with an open CPS case. I know because it was posted online. She's serving the board. How can you serve our children when you have an open CPS case? Where is your thoughts for the children? At another meeting, you said that you wanted to change the board meetings, and you had people come and speak and saying that they were afraid to come to the city of Newburgh. But you have a board member that parties at Terrace Lounge in the city of Newburgh on November 26th. Yeah, we got footage. We have people sitting on the board that own businesses in the city of Newburgh. So how are you afraid to come to the city of Newburgh to run the Board of Education, which you signed up for, but you can party at 2 o'clock in the morning at Terrace Lounge in the city of Newburgh? You can have a flower shop on Broadway in the city of Newburgh. I'm sick of you guys sitting up here making these racial tactics, systematic racism, oppressing our community, but you say you all are up here for the children. Where are the children at when you made the decision to not hire a sub-TA and a sub-clerical when I have 10 plus years in human services, 8 plus years as a teacher's aide, came highly recommended by my current employer, but you all voted me, well, no, 5 of you voted me down because you were upset. Maybe you should vote the board member down who has an open CPS case. Maybe you should vote the board member down who parties at Terrace's Lounge. Maybe you should vote the board member down who has no experience in education. You guys are investigating a board member, your current board member who has 23 plus years in teaching, 3 plus years in the city of Newburgh, 18 years in the city of Rockland County, and volunteers for the Newburgh and Lark City School District, and you guys are investigating her. Where is your concern for these children that you say you are up here to serve? But I know neither of you will look at me because you don't have the guts. You will sit and type on your computers, and you'll wait till your mother texts you on what to say. Where is your concern for the community? There's no concern for the community. We know the 5 Clear Choice Coalition is up here to fight the battles of Deborah Boulay, Darren Stridiron, and Richard Desiderio, a.k.a. Daniel Baez. You're not up here here for yourself. You're up here for a tactic.
The next person signed up to speak on non-agenda items is Mr. Dennis Grant.
Dennis Grant again, City of Newburgh. Systematic bullying. I say to you, when you are governing as a board and you govern your way into the operations of the district, you must be nimble. You can't say, oh, we can't meet up today, so those activities can't happen. You need to be nimble and adjust to the needs of the district when operations of the district is at hand. No excuses, no excuses, no excuses. And if you agree to this, you still remain the governing body. So do not, I repeat, do not abandon your governance for the preferred closer oversight that you're clamoring for. Your lack of board training will simply be our financial burden. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak on non-agenda items, Ms. Lily Howard.
I'm going to tell you, baby. Thank you, son. What's going on? What's happening, like Marvin Gaye said? What's happening, brother? Sister? You want to know what's going on? White fragility is going on. Let's talk. The day that Superintendent Dr. Campbell's feet touched the Newburgh Enlarged School District's floors, some were determined that her mission was going to be made impossible. Wow. I must say that I truly do believe that School Board President Christine Bello and her crew were a part of that group that had that mindset before they became members of the school board. In fact, that mindset is the real reason that they ran for the school board. I find this time that we are presently in the soon beginning of Black History Month. What better time than now to have this discussion regarding racism still being alive and well throughout this country and the city of Newburgh most definitely. How long is white fragility going to last? How long? Wake up, wake up, wake up. White fragility is a rare and incisive examination of the systems of white body supremacy, which binds all as Americans. White fragility is the secret ingredient that makes racial conversations so difficult and achieving racial equity even harder. Being that this is almost the beginning of Black History
Can I
Month.
have a motion to recess until we can restore order?
You know what, Ms. Bello? Get ready.
That's what they better do, recess.
Get ready, because your business is going to be closed down. We are going to boycott your business. We're going to boycott that business, okay? Okay?
Our rules of order, Ms. Howard, we don't incite Violence
You've
with
already incited.
racial...
You've already incited violence.
She is not inciting violence. That's out of order. She's not inciting violence.
In the book, White Fragility, let me share this with you. Race is a condition, a disease, a card, a plague, original sin. For much of American history, race has been black culture's issue. Racism, a black person's burden. And what better time to get up and get into a real serious discussion about race than almost the beginning of Black History Month. Truthfully, what's really going on is not a surplus, not a surprise, for racism has been a part of this country's profile since its very beginning. But let us at this specific moment concentrate on what's going on now regarding this school board's treatment of its African American superintendent. How long is it going to be allowed before Superintendent Campbell decides that she will no longer allow herself to be treated in such an inhumane way? How long? How long? How long? How long? How long will she make the decision to give up and leave the school district, which that is exactly what the school board president, Christine Bello, and friends want her to do? I suggest that you all should read the book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, by Robin DiAngelo. White Fragility is a rare and incisive examination of the system of white body supremacy which binds us all as Americans. As powerful forces of white races again swell, DiAngelo invites white progressiveness to have a courageous conversation about their culture of complicity. And I'm just going to say this right now, because I'm not going to read no more. How long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? And let me tell you something, people, you better recognize on the news today, President Trump shut down the Civil Rights Division. You better recognize what's going on throughout this country. But you know what? I believe in God. I believe in God. And God's going to have the last say-so in all of this. So y'all better fasten your seatbelts, because God is not pleased with what's going on. And I must say, y'all shut me off? Okay. God bless all of you. I love you. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Miss Kendra Cameron.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, moving on to the next person, Mr. Torrance Robinson.
I don't have a whole lot more to say other than to kind of revisit what I've said already. I stand formally to contest the recent decision to suspend Superintendent Dr. Jacqueline Manning Campbell with pay without cause. This action not only disrupts the continuity of leadership within our district, but also raises concerns about transparency and due process. Superintendent Manning Campbell has consistently demonstrated a commitment to the educational excellence and well-being of our students, faculty, and community. Under her leadership, this district has achieved notable improvements to school physical plants and found a way to engage community stakeholders to volunteer their time to strategize how to reduce violence at the high school and middle school level. The decision to suspend Dr. Manning Campbell without a clear and justified cause undermines the progress we've collectively made and should be working towards in this district. I came in contact with this district through Dr. Manning because, knowing her as a former classmate, I thought that I would volunteer my time. Most of my work educationally has been in the Bronx, New York. I've pastored a church in the Bronx for 42 years. I'm up this way because I got married and my wife made me move north, but we kind of got together. But the bottom line is this. I believe in pouring into my community and hearing what was going on in some of the schools at the high school level in the community and surrounding community. I reached out to Dr. Manning Campbell to ask what could I do to help. And she called a meeting, and there were stakeholders in that meeting that helped us to begin to strategize about how to address what was going on as far as the violence in high schools and in the area around the schools. Additionally, just last week, she had a room packed full of faith leaders from around this entire city of every background, Catholic, Protestant, etc., all in one room, all talking about how to address the problem of violence among our students in the community. And we felt like we were making good progress, only the next day to find out that she was being suspended with pay, and we're still pinching ourselves to make sure we weren't sleeping or dreaming when that happened. It is imperative that we adhere to principles of fairness and accountability. I urge the board to provide a detailed explanation of the reasons for the suspension and to consider the impact of this decision on our district. Open dialogue and collaboration are essential to resolving this matter in the best interest of our community. I respectfully request that the board reinstate Superintendent Dr. Manning Campbell or provide a transparent process for addressing any concerns. Our focus should remain on fostering a stable and supportive environment for our students and our educators. To my knowledge, there have been no disciplinary meetings with the superintendent or her staff regarding her failure to perform her duties. Rather, she has been opposed over the past 2 years from moving her vision forward. In our government, we have 3 groups: executive, legislative, and judiciary. In the school board, I see it this way. I see the board as legislative, I see the superintendent as the executive branch, and I see the community as the judiciary branch, because we get to vote people in and out. I would say, as I prepare to take my seat to the community, you've got 90,000 registered voters in Newburgh. Only 2,000 voted. And persons that could have been on this board lost by 8 votes. 8 votes. It would change the whole face of this clear choice group or whatever it is. So when May comes, take your souls to the polls. Put your feet and vote. But again, I encourage the Board of Education to please work collaboratively. Now, people talked about Dr. Manning Campbell leaving because of a treatment. Let me tell you something in case you don't know. Dr. Manning Campbell isn't going anywhere. She doesn't care how you treat her. She's a fighter for children, and that's her superpower, fighting for children and supporting teachers. And so I applaud her ability to try to get programs presented to the board that the board voted down every single one. I still don't understand why, but my time is up, and I'm going to take my seat. Please vote.
The next person signed up to speak is Miss Stacy Conley.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Connolly. I live in New Windsor. I'm the mother of a senior at NFA. It has now been 3 months since the football incident, and we still have not received any closure or response from the athletic director or superintendent regarding our senior boys and their ceremonial activities and recognitions for athletics. The lack of communication is concerning as it affects not only the students, but also the coaches and the athletes' families eagerly waiting for a response. We hope that those in charge will address these issues to ensure our seniors receive the recognition they deserve. Parents are increasingly voicing their concerns about the neglect faced by high school athletic programs, athletes, and coaches, They feel that the athletic director who is responsible for supporting and promoting these groups has not fulfilled his commitment. The lack of attention affects not only the athletes' performance, but also their overall experience. They are calling for more accountability from the athletic director. Booster Moms provided the athletic director all of this football senior memorabilia, including banners and other commemorative items. This generous contribution aimed to celebrate the achievements and dedication of each player during their high school career. However, despite the efforts made by the moms, many athletes have yet to receive their banners. We inquired with the AD's office, and we were told they were thrown in the garbage. An online petition, which has now garnered over 450 signatures, is calling for the resignation of current athletic director Christian Hodge. This growing movement reflects the frustration and disappointment of a diverse group of stakeholders, including athletes, students, parents, and guardians. Each signature represents individuals who have been impacted by the actions, inactions, or perceived disinterest of Mr. Hodge in addressing their concerns. The petition highlights a demand for accountability and reform within the athletic program to better support its members. Many signers of the petition have reported a negative experience under the leadership of the chosen athletic director. Those who have chosen to support the petition are united in their call for more engaged and responsive leadership to foster a thriving athletic environment.
Our policy is that you don't use names.
I apologize. 20 other people mentioned many names.
Of an employee. You can't have that.
Not of an employee.
The next person signed up to speak is Ms. Tracy Wallace.
Hello? Make sure it's okay. My name is Tracy. I've come to many meetings. I live in the city of Newburgh. I've brought up, in the 7 months, I've brought up many topics of education that I was concerned with. I've requested how many schools are on Tier 2, which is supports. I've requested the board to look into the iReady and how much of iReady is being used in K through 5. I've expressed concerns about the continued large amount of money that's given to the same 5 transportation buses that continue to have problems time after time after time, incidents time after time. There was even a board member who had spoke about her discrepancies with transportation and the continued contracts. I've discussed policies, numerous policies, and no one gets back to me through an email. The only one that actively talks to me is the superintendent. The superintendent takes me aside after a lot of meetings and says, and I can see she's exhausted. I mean, I believe I went home at 12:30 one night from this board meeting. I went home at 1 in the morning. I've been home at 12. My kids didn't even see me one day. I think they went on the bus, and I missed my kids for a whole day because I stayed at these meetings time after time after time in hopes to talk to someone, but not one board member had asked about any of my concerns. Not one board member had discussed anything with me other than I only hear the squabbles that occur in the 7 months. It's disconcerting because I push for the Citizen Advisory Committee, and I feel like I'm not being heard. As a Citizen Advisory Committee, these committee members, you can strategically organize the community to come to look at policies and talk about policies and have, some form of strategic planning with the community instead of making decisions. There has been a board member who I've reached out to, and there's a board member that I feel defends the community, and she's constantly being reprimanded by what she stands for, and she's constantly defending us, and she was up for an investigation. I don't even know if she's still under investigation, this board member, who continues to be under investigation. The 5 who silenced my dear friend who came up for an employment position, on the mic, and I don't mean to, and again, I do not want to create any rift, but the president, of the board had called someone an a-hole in the microphone and openly apologized and wanted, I'm guessing, forgiveness of some kind. But where was the grace for the community member who was up for employment? She came up here and heartily apologized and said how she wasn't raised like this, and she openly just poured her heart out, really poured her heart out in a real apologetic manner, and really looked at the board in their face. And what happened? 5 abstained. And I thought there was a balance at some point in the beginning of this administration. I did see a balance, but then the balance turned. And it's concerning because what happened? Why? What happened to that? There were debates. They were actively debating, and then it turned. And then it's 5 against 4. And then the administration can't go on and do its duties if there's constantly bickering between the two. How can the students or any policies raised, how can they be discussed? How can the community be involved in these committees? I have asked repeatedly for strategic planning, for help, for anything, and all we receive is tension. I don't think that the board respects the history of the City of Newburgh passion that you see. I think that there is really strong history when you come here, and even when you have businesses here, and the strong history as you go around, and the history is not being respected. And there's a history. I know my time is about to run out, but the police were called on black members of our community who defend our community and defend their children, and the police were called. Meanwhile, there were teachers, white teachers, lined up and no police were called. And so it's the actions of the board, and it's the actions that of what happens to them is the reason why you have this tension. Thank you.
The last person to be signed up to speak on non-agenda items will be Ms. Starla Burks.
Emails. They can't talk back, but so what they do is if you email, then you get on a list, and if they have time under the 30 minutes and they can allow you to talk, then they allow you to talk.
The floor is yours, Ms. Burke.
I tried to explain.
What you want me to say? Okay.
It's okay, sorry, you got it.
I know I do. You gotta, when you're standing up here, you gotta properly word what you want to say because you don't want to be gabbled. Okay. For far too long, critical areas within our system, be it the teacher contract, negotiations, athletics, or other entrenched structures, have neglected the fundamental needs of our students. The politics playing out in this district are tearing our community apart. They erode trust, waste time and resources, and distract us from the core mission, ensuring every child in this district receives an excellent education and the support necessary for their success. As I stated before, I'm always challenging you guys to just take a step back, reevaluate why you joined or why you ran, because we all have some skeletons. And the moment you're faced with your skeletons, you run and you hide. You toss a stone and then you run and you hide. There's no accountability on your parts. No one wants to say this, no one wants to say that. It's always just a conflict of interest, or, you know, we're sitting here waiting for Deb Boulay to text us what to say or how to respond or even how to look. Yet once we're here and the community is here and our very own vice president of the board has not looked up from her laptop. I could only imagine what's on the side of that laptop. So now, yeah, look at me. Because let me tell you, boo, your looks don't scare me. But what fears you is my intelligence, my ability to stand here and to face you week after week, month after month, day after day, and to know that you will not ever get rid of me. Because when it comes to these NECSD students, go-backs as they're called, we're standing on necks. We're standing 10 toes down. Because dare you not come in here and play and try to eliminate us from our own district. You can't do that. Yes, Dr. Campbell has sat here. Yes, she's highly educated. Yes, none of you have her education outside one who has an MBA because she took a little interest and decided to invest in herself, which some of you should have did. Then you can successfully sit up here and debate. But no, you don't do that. You come in here, you make up reasons, and this board president, she never has a reason. She can never respond to anything. She doesn't even know how to effectively run a board meeting. She's looking to McCoy and Boucher, who then is looking on the laptop waiting for her mother to tell her what to do. So how about we, for once, take accountability for yourselves? Stop throwing the blame on Dr. Campbell and stand on your own 10 toes.
And now I'll turn it over to Ms. Onyx Peterson for the superintendent's update. Oh, sorry.
Hey, Fred's hand was up first.
Fred?
I'd like to make a motion to go to executive session.
So moved. Do I have a second? What's it for?
I want to revisit what we talked about.
Okay. Okay. Do I have a second? Second. Roll call.
So the reason is employment matters leading to the employment history of particular individuals? Got it. Roll call on executive session. Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
No.
Mr. DeRay?
No.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Ms. Politi?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Oh, okay. Right now, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Onyx Peterson for the superintendent's update.
Good evening, everyone. Item 1.2, before we get into the budget presentation from me and Mrs. Roaring, is an update on where we are as a district. I know a lot of people in the community right now are upset for various reasons. One of the reasons why I came to Newburgh was that I'm born and raised here. I'm part of this community, whether I work here. And there's valid concerns. One thing that used to always be said to me growing up is that Newburgh is a microcosm of America. We have it all, and it prepared me well. It prepared me well for the obstacles that we are going to see, and we're seeing in our country around class, around racism, about budget, about having the funds to be able to support the needs that we want. Every person that took a moment of their time this evening to come out and speak is appreciated. And my hope, and I know leadership's hope in general, is to make sure that our community is involved. And it's been a mission that I have been on 6 years working in this district, is how do I get more people involved with my students? How do I get more people invested in this community? I think one thing that is clear, that people just don't come to board meetings we're all busy. We all have jobs. You come here to be heard. We're listening. We understand what your concerns are. I know the parents that express their concerns about athletics. That's a real thing, and I've been hearing it week after week, and I understand and know there's things as an administrator that I can and I cannot say. I've even spoken to those parents, and many parents have reached out to the board regarding certain things. But the one thing that I can say about athletics, we have a lot of committed parents and students that participate, and as you know, in some recent headlines, there's a lot of things that we need to also get in order, and that is a rocky place to be as a district. How do we honor what we have and what we've always done, and then how do we bring us forward to a place where accountability and consistency is a part of the culture? Because we know as community members, as parents, interacting with the school district is not always consistent. It is not always consistent, and leadership owns that lack of consistency. So how do we change and make our district a better place? This week, within the last week and a half, we've had 2 community shootings. I've been up at this high school talking to students, talking to parents, talking to community members about how I'm supporting not only the physical safety of our student within these buildings, but what about their mental state? I had a student that I interacted with that took a survey regarding the physical yet emotional safety. I have meetings with our building level leaders talking about what is our children's emotional safety about coming to school. It's definitely not the same when I came here. I never feared such things. In a parent conversation, she's had 3 generations of, she's a person that has lived here for 3 generations. She has 2 more students in the high school, and she said every one of us had a different experience. And that speaks to the consistency. And how are we bringing a consistent education to our community? And that conversation was a hard one, just like some of the conversations that we've had here have been hard ones, to talk about what's fair and what's just, and how can we as a district move forward without consistent leadership? How can we do it in a way that's respectful to disagree? How can we move forward and support our leaders and our teachers? How can we develop them to accept our students? To ensure that they're getting the best education so that when they leave here, they have the skills to be the best citizens. How are we doing that? And I think right now, we've tried to start that work, and as the deputy superintendent, I know that those questions are being asked. Who's running the district? It's me. It's me until it's not me. So, and I don't say that as it's me. It's me, okay? I'm dedicated and I'm committed. For those of you who don't know, my first role in the district was the director of pupil personnel. After 15 years of counseling, I decided to come back to my community because I wasn't so happy with the experience that my niece and nephew had here. And one thing that I quickly learned about Newburgh, like I knew the background, right? I've lived here, I've been a go-back, I'm a go-back for life, that this district has a lot of trauma. We have a lot of trauma in this district. We have trauma with our parents because there's been a lack of consistency. There's no trust in anyone's word because we say things at times to people that are not supposed to know things. And we have no trust with our staff members because we have a hard-working staff that are committed and come every day to serve. Everything is not always going to be perfect, but what I can say is that of those committed staff members, sometimes what occurs to them is that there's always a change in leadership that then brings about the help that they spoke to a previous leader about. I'm having a problem. I need some more support. I need you to order these supplies. I need this, I need that. That leader leaves. That request is gone and they got to start all over again. And what I hope that even in this time and what we are going through, that we can agree to disagree and try to move things forward for our students. I know that there's been many community collaborations that I have sat side by side and help be a part of and help communicate with community leaders because regardless who's sitting here, these issues still remain. We still have students that are afraid to come in our doors right now. We still have parents that are angry because of something not being handled appropriately. We still have board members that have questions that need to be answered. All of those things are true all at the same time. And we can be angry about those things, or we could try to be a part of the solution. I'm here to be a part of the solution. So even in the absence, I know that change is hard. I know that on December 10th, and I'm sure it's on YouTube, I spoke for the need for unity and reflection. That was going into the new year. But now, my tune has changed a little, is how are we still, in this time of change, gonna be collaborative? How are we gonna be unified to support our students? And I ask the community this next couple months will be hard. You will be angry. There are things that will happen that are gonna enrage you that you may support. But we always have to reflect. I know that the students is one, but I also think about my staff. I think about my staff who have to come and there was something that was released that was not true. My phone didn't stop ringing for half of the afternoon because a question was asked if I was committed to be here. I am. Right, but sometimes things get out of Newburgh that say that I'm not. So I want the community to know I am running the district right now. And so I hope that as I give this budget presentation and as that there's gonna be questions, ask your questions. We need to be very clear about this budget because this has been used as a tool to divide us as a community and there needs to be understanding around it. So if there is questions, there was a QR code that was outside. I ask that you ask the question so that myself and Mrs. Roaring can construct answers to answer the questions. And we know all questions are not going to be easy because everybody knows with fiscal management how you decide to run your household and how your sister decides to run their household is very different. It's very different. So there may be questions, you may not agree with what our answers are, but we will be able to justify our answers and our choices that we have made. This is my fifth year on executive leadership, so I have been a part of 4 different budget cycles. So they're not easy processes. And I am now going to move on to the second agenda item. Myself and Mrs. Roaring are going to co-present to make sure that we have an understanding in the community regarding our budget. I think for the board, the budget presentation is behind you. There is also copies if you don't have them. I don't know, do we have a clicker? Is there a clicker? Okay, so I'm going to just say next slide. So let's talk about the goals of this presentation. The goal of this presentation, the first goal is for me and Mrs. Roaring, we're going to explain to you the budget cycle. I think in some of the things that have brought to us and questions that have been asked, it is very clear that we need to review how the budget cycle is done, what we do, how we do it. First slide. The next thing that we're going to answer, we've seen some pretty loud questions from the community regarding why we raise taxes and why do we have a surplus. Some of you may have read online or saw the presentation, so you have a preview of some of that, but Mrs. Roaring and myself are going to explain it. We're also going to give you the initial expense projection for next year. So the resources, next slide, that we have for this presentation are some budget information that we've had in the past. We also have included the budget calendar, also memos that have gone out to the school community regarding the budget and some corrections of misinformation. The reason why we're doing that is because we feel that it's important for you to see what we have actually documented and said in the past. We also think it's important to engage you. We knew many of you may come tonight. There's another QR code. If you want to stay up on the budget and its process, please sign up so you can be on our listserv and understand what is going on. Next slide. So the budget process has three distinct areas. There's budget development and planning, budget management, and audit. I'm going to go over budget development and management, and Mrs. Roaring is going to talk a little bit about audits. So budget development is like a planning session. We have been in budget planning since December of this year. Budget is ongoing for the executive leadership team, and budget planning is the responsibility of the superintendent of schools in conjunction with the school business official, Ms. Roaring. So we're responsible for the preparation of that. Budget planning is based on projections, right? So everything, when we're in these sessions and when we're talking about our budget, it is based on a projection. So if we think about it in terms of like our household, you know, we sometimes with the electric company, we say, okay, we have budget billing, we know exactly. And sometimes we say, you know, there's fluctuations. Sometimes there's extra $10 or $15 in something, you're like, where did that come from? It's the same thing with budget development. It is based on projection. We utilize some historical data to make these projections. However, there are things that impact. We have changes of enrollments, you know, out-of-district placement. If there's a building, I know many of you were sitting in a room that wasn't available to us last June because the air conditioner went. And I know you all made people's graduations very interesting in Newburgh last year because our air conditioner went. We also had other situations where the roof, there's another part of this building. This building had a lot of repairs over the last year where we had to replace a roof unexpectedly. So our budget has different things that occur that we have to make changes for as a school district. So we, in the budget planning and development process, we have to look at what happened in the past, but then we also have to think what could happen in the future and prepare for both things at the same time. We also have collaboration, next slide, with internal stakeholders. And basically what that means is that, yes, executive team is responsible for managing the bulk of the budget planning. However, we cannot do that, nor would we want to do that alone. We really make sure that our principals have a voice and our directors have a voice, because they are what we call boots on the ground. They're in our buildings, they are looking at what is needed, they are recommending changes that need to occur. So already our principals have submitted additional funding requests on minor repairs that they would like to see, whether it's over the summer or throughout the year, maybe extra supply or equipment that wasn't an original part of their projection. We also meet with directors and principals one-on-one, and we review their staffing. We talk about programs they have, programs they would like, and we really give them feedback on some of the appropriated fund balance and adjustments that they do have. We review program models and identify many efficiency or changes that would enhance effectiveness. So if we're paying for something that we're not utilizing, or we have something that we need more of, these are when these conversations happen. Next slide. So the budget development, again, is ongoing, and a part of that is just to set the information in terms of what you as a community would know to come and visit. So, attend a board meeting. So on October 24th, the budget calendar was approved. It has status updates, and the superintendent proposed budget was going to be shared, and that is prepared by the business official. It has the actions, what we'll be talking about on what night. The superintendent and the executive leadership have started that planning. I know that many of you had just heard about some stakeholder meetings. We have started that process. We have a parent meeting, a PTA parent feedback session scheduled for the 13th. That still will occur, where we will get information from our PTAs regarding what they feel they need their students to have in the next year's budget. On January 9th, we met with local municipalities and governance, our local assemblymen and senators, and we talked about the things within our budget that may be confusing to our public. What are some strategies? What are they hearing from their constituents that we could be doing a better job at to ensure that when we put out our budget this year, that it is clear and concise for our community. And then the overviews over the next couple of months will be presented by the board by executive cabinet. So each executive cabinet leader here runs a division, and that division has to be funded, and they manage their budget. So they are going to present to the board what their thoughts are on what their needs are for the coming school year. Next slide. The role of the Board of Education is responsible for approving the budget. So the superintendent and the cabinet work to present the board information regarding what our wants and our needs are for the next year. They help us in the planning by giving us guidance so that we can propose a balanced budget to the community members. Once the community members vote, they accept that budget from the community members. They monitor the budget and to ensure services are delivered and planned, and they talk about reserve funding and how our reserve accounts should be funded. We're going to go a little bit into what a reserve account is, what that means, how it can be sent. So Mrs. Roaring is going to talk about the 4 levels of the oversight of accounting.
Next slide. So the district has 4 levels of auditing oversight, and most of these are exercised on a routine basis. And it's important that we talk about each of these because they each have a very distinct role and purpose. So the external audit is something that's done each year. It's done by an independent firm that's appointed by the Board of Education, and it is done after the fiscal year has been completed. And they're looking to make sure that we have adhered to the generally accepted accounting principles and complied with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. The internal auditor has a different purpose, and they are also appointed by the board as an independent entity. They come in and they look at risk, and they're going through specific areas to see if we have any risk. Do we have internal controls to mitigate that risk? And where they think that we do not have sufficient internal controls, they make recommendations. And those audits for both the external and the internal auditor are reviewed in detail with the board's audit committee. They meet directly with them. The third area we've talked a lot about this year, and that is the claims auditor and the deputy claims auditor. These individuals are appointed by the board as individuals separate and apart from the business office who are responsible to review every claim for payment the district has in front of it. They are looking to make sure that procurement procedures were followed, that the proper sign-offs are there, that the information is accurate and it's an appropriate purchase, and then they approve the payment. If they do not approve the payment is not made. The last is the board's audit committee, and they assist the board with matters related to both the internal and external audits. They also provide input on the hiring of the internal and external audit firms, review reports and recommendations, and when needed, they follow up to make sure those recommendations have been implemented. We also have support from the New York State Comptroller's Office. They look at several different things. One of the things that they put in place a little over 10 years ago is a fiscal stress monitoring system. And the purpose of that is to really look at district finances across the state. They look at every district. And they assess those finances against indicators that they've identified to determine if a district is in a state of fiscal stress or susceptible to fiscal stress. Newburgh has never been designated in this system, which means we are in a solid financial position. They also do budget analysis and financial reporting of the state's budget and provide input. They give us guidance on how we calculate our fund balance projections. And lastly, the State Comptroller's Office comes into school districts and other municipalities and does audits themselves with their own auditors. They render reports with recommendations, and those are also reviewed with the Board of Education. Next slide. So there's some terminology that we've used, and we want to make sure that we're really clear on what all of those things mean. A budget gap is the difference between projected revenues, what income we are anticipating coming in, and our projected expenditures, what we're planning on spending next year. The gap during the budget development and planning process must be closed. The superintendent must propose a balanced budget to the board. The board must adopt a balanced budget and present that to the community. Next slide, please. One of the other words that's been out there is deficit. So it's really important that we're clear on this. School districts, by law, cannot operate in a deficit. We cannot deficit spend. We must have sufficient revenues to cover our expenditures. Next slide, please. So one of the terms that we have used during budget development in the 23-24 planning year and the 24-25 planning year is the term structural deficit, which is different from the term deficit. So when we say there's a structural deficit, as part of our planning process, we began providing multi-year projections to the board during budget development, looking out 3 years. And as we project those expenditures over 3 years and the revenue over 3 years, our expenditures were expected to continue to be far above what our revenue was going to be. That's when you have a structural deficit, because you have a continuing widening gap between your expenses and your revenue.
So, next slide. What we know to be true, right, is that expenses increase every year. Though we don't like them to, they do. Every year, something goes up, right? And if we do not have revenue to support those expenses, you're going to have to take something off from the expense side. We see that in our household. Okay, everything went up. I got to go through that cable bill. I'm going to sit online for 25 minutes to figure out how I can get it down another $25. Or do I really need cable? Maybe I should figure out a cheaper way. Or what's going on with my cell phone plan? It's the same thing that we do in budget planning. We look at the district's expenses. We ensure and try to reduce and make sure that our revenue can cover our expenses as a district. So I want to go into some past presentations. And the reason why I think it's important to bring this up, because it's the same message, different messengers. It's the same message. So next slide. This is a budget presentation. It's also all of our, as I said before, everything is on our website around our budget presentations. In 2022 budget presentation, there was conversation, and this chart was presented to the board. And it talked about our budget to budget increases versus our tax levy increases. And at that time, the executive leadership team was warning the board that the levy, not increasing the levy, not increasing our revenue, was concerning, because our expenses and our contractual obligations go up yearly. We have 3 bargaining units as a district with other contracts that we are responsible for that have commitments in them, and we must meet our contractual obligations. So this was something that was brought up, that we really need to discuss this gap. And I know that if you want to add across the top, these are the increases year over year, and this remained flat. Next slide. Okay. So during the 22-23 budget development, is it on? Go ahead. It's on. Yeah. Cookies test.
Test.
Okay.
During the 22-23 budget development process, we had a 4% year-over-year expenditure increase. So our expenses went up 4% from the 21-22 year. We did not do a tax levy increase that year, but we did continue all of our current programs and initiatives, and we did that in two ways. The first was that we had the one-time Federal Reserve funds federal funds associated with the American Rescue Plan, and that was a pretty significant funding source for the district for a period of time, and those funds have expired. We also were in one of the 3 years where the governor made a commitment to fully fund foundation aid, and that was fully executed during the 23-24 year. So the full funding has also ended. Next slide, please.
So this is where we stand this year. This was from the 24-25 budget-to-budget increases, and then our tax levy increase. And Kimberly Roaring and Dr. Manning Campbell at that time suggested that long-term solutions, we have to start addressing this because there may be a point in the near future where our funding sources are going to change. And we definitely do not want to hit our community with an unexpectedly large tax levy, because what was the thing that I said a little while ago? If we do not meet our expense, if we don't get our revenue, something has to happen with our expenses, and we must meet our contractual obligations. Okay, next slide. So the reason why we raised taxes is because we had structural deficit. What the district has been doing is we've been using one-time funds, whether they're the COVID American Rescue Plan money, or using our district savings account, our reserves, and we'll explain that more to you in a little bit, to offset these differences in expenditures. We need to start looking about how and when that can happen, and if it's going to impact the district negatively. We could continue this, but you know, I think as a community we really have to say, okay, how can we make small adjustments so that this doesn't impact programs and services that we know that our children need. We also know that COVID one-time funds have expired. This was a huge offset in our expenses last year. We were able to fully use our ARP funds, and making sure that we tracked our expenses to make sure that that one-time money was used, because it was needed. The services in that moment of time that the government gave it to us, it was needed. So let's talk about how we approached. What was executive cabinet thinking? Next slide. What was executive cabinet thinking when we approached? So we went into the 24-25 budget development season. What we knew was that ARP was sunsetting, that we were not going to be able to use those one-time funds. We knew we could not offset some of our expenses there. So the directive at the time from Mrs. Roaring and Dr. Brennan Campbell was, we need to do a zero-based approach, which meant a lot of long weekends, looking through every penny that we spent. Is it needed? Why is it needed? How is it needed? We also reviewed all staffing needs with every principal, with human resources. You're working here, are you needed? How are we accounting for every employee in this district to ensure that when we came to you with a budget presentation, we were basing those decisions on current information that we had. We also knew that with ARP sunsetting, we offered a retirement incentive to 2 units because we knew that there were a lot of new teachers that were brought in under the American Rescue Plan. And we knew that they're talented, they fell in love with our district, we fell in love with them, and we wanted to maintain. But we also know that sometimes people are ready to retire, so we gave them an incentive to do so. So we knew that that staffing approach would also help us figure out what is needed and to only hire what is needed. So the budget guidance at the time from the Board of Education, next slide, was they gave us some very clear kind of things that we needed to take into account when we were planning. Minimal to no layoffs. We know that many people, we are one of the largest employers in this community, and it has an impact on families if we lay off from this district. We ask for minimal to no levy increases because we also know that that affects our our community when property taxes increase. And they asked us to explore different ways to cut programs without impacting student activities and extracurriculars. They wanted to make sure that we were funding athletics, music, drama, as well as clubs and activities that our schools participate in, that they did not want to see those disappear. So with that guidance, we decided to reduce some program costs and staffing. So staffing, we looked at programs and we said, okay, we are going to fund what we know that we need. We decreased instructional technology and supplies. This is a tough pill for me to swallow at the time, as I was the director of technology, but I understood that we did have enough supply to try to get us over that hump and that we could use one-time funding to kind of get the district's needs met. We postponed network upgrades. Another hit to the technology department in that we postponed and spread those out over time because we knew that it was more important to make sure that we have staffing and that we make sure that our district is operating in the best fashion. And we reduced equipment and supply funds across the district so that we can ensure that we met that last bullet that's on this presentation, that we did not impact student programmings, athletics, and extracurricular activities. Next slide.
So having taken a zero-based approach to the 24-25 budget, as we began our work for the 25-26 planning process, we have done a rollover, which essentially means that everything we have in the current year in the general fund, what does it cost us to do the exact same thing next year? It includes increases in the contractual salaries that Ms. Peterson mentioned in our collective bargaining agreements, as well as the employee benefits we provide. Additionally, it includes increases in our contract services, out-of-district tuition, utility expenses, and insurance premiums, which have increased each year. Expenses for instructional programming, student supports, technology, and continued district operations are also included, but the rollover does not include anything additional. So Ms. Peterson mentioned that our principals and directors have made some requests for additional funding. They've made requests for some minor maintenance projects. Those things are not in the number we're sharing with you tonight. Next slide, please. So in doing that, right now, we are projecting our 25-26 rollover budget to be $368,800,235, which is $9.8 million more than it is this year. It's important to note that that does not include mandates that we're going to be having for Contract for Excellence. It does not include any program changes, IEP requirements that may come through, staffing adjustments, security enhancements, or again, those additional requests from our principals and directors. Next slide, please. There are a number of mandated expenses the district must cover each year, starting with tuition. We also have to make sure that we're in compliance in our special education programming. We have to provide E&L services that are compliant. There is mandated testing. We have to have insurance, legal fees. We have to clean and maintain our schools. We transport our students. We have our contractual obligations to our employees. We procure materials for instructional purposes. We must conduct an annual budget vote, and we must have audit services. Next slide, please. So the biggest expense drivers in our budget is our faculty, staff, and administrator salaries. followed by the employee benefits associated with those individuals that include health insurance and contributions to the retirement system. One of our other biggest cost drivers is student transportation. We transport our elementary students from home to school, and we have reduced what the state believes is an appropriate distance of 3 miles to 0.5 miles for our secondary students. We also have out-of-district tuition, not just for our exceptional learners, but also for foster students and for those who choose to attend charter schools. We have to pay that tuition. And the other biggest cost driver in our budget is debt service, which is for work that's been completed on our schools, as well as for work that we're currently doing, including building the new CTE center.
So I know the question in there is, why do we have savings as a district? Why is it important for us to have a surplus? So there's three things that we really need to understand as a community. State aid is a projection. And we thank our assemblymen and those that have been asking for the full funding of our state aid. So we thank them for that. However, we know that at this 3-year expand that ended in 23?
24.
24, okay, 24. We know that we are not going to get those same increases anymore, that our number is going to be our number. The other thing that we know, that we are all kind of seeing daily what is going to happen, is that we have an unsure political landscape. There was memos that were released today. State aid corrected some of them in terms of what is going to happen to title money. So for those that may not know, Title I, some other title expenses that are paid through the federal government help us offset general fund expense. So I know Mrs. Roaring talked a little bit about mandated expenses. Some of those mandated things that we must do, we use some of our federal dollars to fund. So that it is concerning to us right now what is happening at the federal level and what that means for education. And there's some things that still in our community may be impacted that we're still exploring. A memo came out before we got to this board meeting regarding how some of the federal cuts in education are going to impact our food program. So for us as a community, that is very concerning. So that's another reason why we choose and we think that it's important for us to have a savings account, because it's also financially responsible. So many of our ratings, we're in the middle of a capital project right now. And sometimes when you go out, you have to take short-term loans and different things. We have a rating as a district. It's a Moody's rating. We need to make sure that we keep that rating in a good standing for those short-term loans. We also know that we have investments as a district, and in those investments, they look at how we're moving money around in our savings. So it's important for those things to be kept there so that we can keep our rating up, so that when we do, or if we do have to borrow, we're getting the lowest possible interest rate on that money. Next slide. So Mrs. Roy's going to talk a little bit about reserves and what their intended use is. Some are indicated as special. She's going to go into it.
So the district has restricted reserves, and these are essentially savings accounts that are for specific purposes only. So one of the reserves that the district has used recently was our capital reserve. The capital reserve was established by the voters. It was funded by approval of the board from surplus funds in prior years, and we used those funds both to support the capital project as well as to support the NFA main locker room renovations that the community voted on in 2023. It's important that we have these reserve funds because having savings is part of the factor that they look at, both with the state comptroller's fiscal stress monitoring system, as well as Ms. Peterson mentioned, our borrowing rating, which is critically important for us at this time. Some of the reserves are established by the board, and some, like the capital reserve, do require the voters' approval. Reserves are funded from surplus funds as the recommendation from the superintendent at the end of the year, and that recommendation must be approved by the board. This slide shows a list in the left-hand column of all of the reserves and fund balance accounts the district has. We've color-coded them here so that you can see that the ones that are in green are ones that we can use as a revenue source for our budget, and that is something we have been doing in the last couple of years. Those that are in black may not be used for that purpose. They can only be used for very prescriptive things. Next slide, please. So when we look at those that were highlighted in green on the previous slide, these are the balances in those accounts as of June 30th, 2024. That reflects the funding that the board approved at the end of June from any surplus funds the district had. It's important to note that when we look at workers' compensation, the district pays the first $750,000 on any workers' comp claim before we have insurance coverage, and then there's a sharing of that cost. That's why that reserve sits at that number, because we know we have large expenses in that area. The total of these is $44.4 million. Of that, $3.5 million is planned to be used in our current fiscal year. Next slide, please. When we look at our 24-25 revenue, we wanted to break this up and make it a little bit clearer. So the slide, the piece that's in a darker blue and orange combined is over $225 million, and that is our total state aid. That's over 60% of our revenue. The orange slice of the pie is restricted funds. So while the state gives us that money, they also tell us the 6 categories we can spend it in, and the amount we have to spend at each of our schools. The $470,000 tiny green slice of the pie is federal aid. The lighter blue area is our tax levy for the 24-25 year that was $113 million. The lighter green at the top of 11.3 is our use of our savings, both in restricted reserves and general savings. The $8.1 million is other local sources of revenue. So we also get interest earnings, we have utility taxes, we have use fees for our spaces. So there's other revenue that we are able to derive as well. Next slide, please.
So state aid allocations, I know we started to talk a little bit about that this evening in terms of the fact that 65% of our projected revenue comes from state aid. Mrs. Roing also pointed out that the contract for excellence is earmarked. We have to use it in a certain way. So that gives us a little restriction as to how we can use that money throughout our school district. And it can't be used to cover a previous expense. So if there's something that has been working and existing in the district, we have to follow the state aid formula for contract for excellence. We're one of 13 school districts that are under this, and the increases that we're seeing in the foundation aid are outpacing our general state aid. So last year, I know in our slide we talked about in the revenue pie that we've got awarded 17, the state allocated $17 million. Next year, they're projecting that is going to increase. But that restricts the ways in which the district is going to use it. Next slide. So I know that there's this surplus that also has been mentioned, the unassigned fund balance of at least $3.7 million. I want the community to know that that $3.7 million represents 1% of our operating budget. So we know the number is large, but we also know that there's expenses that happen in the district that this, our payroll, different things. We are a large district. It is 1%. We also know that it is 1% over the recommended amount from the comptroller's audit. So as an executive leadership team and with the collaboration of the board, what we're going to decide and what our recommendation is to take the 3.7. We talked about this increase that we have to work out We have to work out that $9 million increase over the next several months. So we know that this is a surplus, and the recommendation is to be at 4%, and we need to be at 4%. And that is why we're asking for that, or we will be asking the board to place that revenue amount on top of it. So let's talk about where this surplus came from. Okay? Because I think it's important for the voters to understand and for the board to understand. I know that we've said it, but I want to go into detail as to how we got the surplus. So about 3 years ago, actually, when I was PPS director, one of the things that me and Mr. Bear at the time talked about was how could we increase our Medicaid reimbursement. We are a high needs district, and if we get permission, there's a way for the district to get reimbursement on those funds. So we made some programmatic changes. Medicaid is a projection, and it goes throughout the year. There's sometimes admissions come in. We can't project what we're going to get back. We're happy when we do get it back because we're providing the services, but we can't project that. So we got a higher than expected Medicaid reimbursement. Okay? The next thing that we need to talk about is interest earning. So the Federal Reserve sets policies, and those policies inform interest rates. So we talked a little bit before about the fact that we have bonds and we have investments. So our investments did well. So in that investment doing well, it came back at a higher amount than we anticipated. And the Federal Reserve sets those policies. So that's a little out of our control. Our municipalities are doing well. For the first time, we got our utility taxes. We usually look at historical data. We project what we think we're going to get. Last year, we got a whole lot more. I don't want to tell the municipalities, no, I don't want your money. We need that money. It's owed to us. We're thankful that they were able to get it to us. That is why that also contributed to the surplus. And the state aid gave us a little bit more in excess cost than anticipated. So these numbers and the reason for these surpluses, and it's represented, is because there's a lot of factors that go into revenue. As again, it's a projection. It's not a concrete estimate.
There's one thing I do want to add to this. The community approved a $335 million budget for 23-24. We spent most all of that. We had about $900,000 left that we could have spent before we maxed out our budget. So truly, these funds came from revenue that exceeded our projections. We did spend our money.
Okay, so just as a review. So, the community and to the board, we know that our expenses are projected. Some expenses are mandated. They can vary based on student enrollment. We review them as an executive leadership team with the community, and the superintendent recommends programs and staff to support our students. Projections are based on the information available and currently where the district stands in terms of operational things that may be occurring. The revenue that we receive is projected. They are estimates based on historical data, finalized aid runs, Federal Reserve rates, and it's also the timing of when we get those reimbursements within the district. So the next steps, where are we? Right now we are reviewing staffing for programs, general support, superintendent's office, communications, human resource and business office, buildings and ground and transportation, curriculum and instruction. At our next board meeting, we will be presenting to you those departments and divisions and different needs and different things they would like to bring to the attention of board about what they're doing, who they are, and how we can move forward. We also have to talk a little bit about how we are going to prepare the contract for excellence. We're going to complete our internal revenue projection, as well as additional funding requests for principals and directors with the board. We're also going to continue to solicit community input. Again, there is going to be a way for you to contact us. Hopefully you guys see that communication. I'll also ensure that it's on the main website where we talk about there may be a concern that you have. There may be something that happens in the building where you send your child that you say, why can't this be fixed? Or something, an idea that you may have, please put those in so that we can review them as an executive team. So now, if there's any questions for the board, me and Mrs. Roaring will answer them or provide them in another presentation. Are there any questions?
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'd like to say, awesome presentation. There's so many false narratives, false stories, misunderstandings out in the communities, and I think you've answered a lot of those questions. But for the sake of those who are mathematically challenged like me, could you please speak to the 4% tax levy and the 8% where we landed? Because there's so much talk in the community that we lie, that I can't use names, but that people were misled. Can you speak to that a little more?
Okay, so we could go back. Our levy last year was 2.48. Okay, so if this is the time I wish I had a clicker. If we could go back, if we could,
you speak like no one understands.
I'm going to get it layman's. I'm going to get it layman's. I'm going to get it so that everybody understands. And Mrs. Peterson. So, if we go to slide 18. Our tax levy, we did put our budget up twice last year. Our levy this year was 2.48, okay? That was our levy for last year. Now, if we go to slide, if we go to slide 29, and we're talking about the reserves, and we're talking about the funding of the reserves. We do have, these are our restricted reserves, and we fund them, and we need to fund them for a reason. We are a district that has high cost when it's surrounding these areas, and these reserves were established by the board to ensure that if there is something that occurs, that there will be a method that the board could use to ensure that we would not impact student programming. So we have, and I know that many times in the presentation, last year we talked about the fact that we do have funds. We do have funds. However, we need to ensure that we do not get into a position where there is some type of change or some type of incident where we are not going to be able to fund. Because as you heard from Mrs. Roaring, we spent most of our money last year that the voters approved. Right? And we know that we spent most of our money, and we had one-time funding still left to spend. Right? So we don't have this place where we can go now. We moved a lot of expenses into the American Rescue Plan. We're trying to bring things back in to our general budget so that we can operate with some semblance of consistency. Okay? Now, the board in the past has used our unassigned fund balance to fund our to balance our budget. So if we can go back to slide.
It's on 29.
The revenue chart, I'm not sure. What slide is it? Slide 30? If we can go back to slide 30. So this pie, remember I was talking about two sides of our budget. We have what we spend out, our expenses, and what we bring in. If you look at our green sliver, that is, I'm going to use the right term, that is our district savings account, and it's a combination of restricted and unrestricted reserves and our fund balance. So we need to ensure, so every year we're dipping in and our allocating this money to balance out our budget. And if we do not start chipping away at that, the gap is going to get wider and wider, because what we know is that every year our expenses go up. There's contractual obligations that make our expenses go up. And that amount for this year's budget is about $9.8 million. So before we add anything, before we discuss anything, our budget-to-budget increase this year is 9.8. We also know that there's going to be changes in policy at the federal level that it may impact this district. So if we look at this revenue chart again, I don't know what policies are coming, but what I want to know is that if these policies do come, that we are still going to be able to offer student programming. So right now, this little sliver of green that is indicated with $470,000 is some federal funding that we use for mandated programs. So if things change, there's also things that are in our title funds right now from the government. If those funding sources change, we need to be able to have money to answer for those changes and run an effective student programming.
Dovetailing on that, I need you to speak to another allegation that's out there. So, because we went for the 4, we got 8%, $8 million back. Well, fix me with those numbers, but there's a rumor out there that this would negatively impact people's STAR credit. And you know, I was under the understanding that STAR was through the state, but how does what we do in the school district impacts people's STAR credit?
So I think one of the things that you're driving at there is the 4% tax cap calculation. So the State Comptroller's Office has recommended that we don't have more than 4% in our unassigned fund balance. When the audit was finalized, we have 5%, not 4%. So we are 1% over. In the presentation, Ms. Peterson indicated that it's our recommendation as we go through the budget process that we will pull out 3.7 of that, which will take us under 4%, and use that as a revenue source. So there have been comments out there about exceeding 4%. I know that's to be true. We are at 5, which is 1% over the recommended limit.
I think that we have to look into that STAR, and that may be, I know that one of the things that we had planned was also to bring in an outside person to speak about the tax cap and how that would fund. I know that there have been changes to STAR, so new homeowners do not receive STAR anymore. That is a question. We can definitely get that back to the board and the community. I think it has to go along with the tax cap calculation. But there was changes to STAR over the recent years. So if you're a new homeowner to the community, you cannot apply to STAR anymore.
You can.
It
just comes as a rebate, not as a credit.
Yes, as a rebate, as a credit. You can apply, but it's not guaranteed that you will get it. So that kind of goes into the tax cap calculation, which is a separate conversation that I don't want to confuse, and I would prefer for us to be able to wait until that. I think the tax cap calculation, we were trying to have that before the next board meeting, so that we can no.
Yep.
No, we didn't confirm yet.
March.
It is coming up. We will let the community know when that is so that we can go in depth into that.
The hearing is bad up here, but it sounded like a great answer, but a simple answer. Did what we did last year impact people's STAR money or credit?
We can't answer that.
Yeah, we can't answer that right now.
So why is everybody in the community answering that? Where are they hearing this from?
I'm not sure. I know that I know that has to go into the calculation of what the levy can be. But if you're like levy, it's a tax cap calculation question, and right now what I would prefer is that if we had someone from ASBO explain to the board and to the community how the tax cap calculation occurred.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? Thank you. That concludes my items.
And at this moment, I'll turn it over to the clerk of the board.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from January 14th, January 17th, and January 23rd.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you. On my agenda, I'd like to make a motion to add an item to my agenda. Can I have a
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
And roll call.
The item to be added reads as follows. Be it resolved that the board president is hereby authorized to sign an acting superintendent of school contract for Dr. Lisa Baughan to become effective February 11th, 2025, as presented to the board at this meeting. And be it further resolved that Dr. Baughan shall be on a leave of absence without pay from her elementary position as an elementary principal by serving in the position of acting superintendent. A copy of said acting superintendent of school agreement shall be incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting.
Motion. Roll call.
Roll call to add an item. Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Ms. Politi?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
No.
So
You will need to entertain a motion on the item that was added, ma'am.
can order. Your point of order. There's no interruptions from the gallery, okay? If you keep it up, you'll have to leave. We have can I have a motion? I mean, a motion?
So moved.
Point of order, you need to put the motion on the floor before there's any discussion, ma'am.
Can't hear.
She's got to put the motion on the floor and then
Yeah. Yeah. You're out of order. Okay, we're secure. Okay, so motion.
You will need to entertain a motion on the item that was added, ma'am.
Okay, a motion. This.
The motion's been read already, ma'am. You just need to entertain a motion that's been added.
Can I have a motion? Motion. And a second.
Point of order, who's putting the motion on the floor?
Thomasina.
Ms. Bello? You need a second, ma'am.
And a second.
Who is the second? I can't hear anything. Who's the second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second, ma'am.
Okay. Discussion?
On discussion. He acted like he didn't want me to speak, so I need to ask a question. Our deputy superintendent, her job description, number 11. Can somebody please read that to me right now? Number 11.
Do you have my job description? I don't think I do, yeah. Do you have my job description, Matthew? I believe so.
Mr. Howard, number 11 of the Deputy Superintendent job description states, serves in the absence of the Superintendent as the Chief Administrative Officer of the district.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Peterson just did an incredible presentation here, above and beyond. If she, according to her job description, goes into the position of the superintendent in that absence, why are we overlooking her for this position? Why? Was she considered? Was she considered for this position? Was she considered for the position? Simple question, Madam President. Was she considered?
We were advised to have the two positions.
You were advised, excuse me? No, hold on, please. You were advised, what were you advised? You were advised to what?
We were advised to have two positions.
Two positions by who?
The two,
See, I'm protecting you right now.
That's a matter of attorney-client.
Mute your mic.
all I can say, Mr. Howard, is if you don't support the resolution, don't like the resolution, then don't vote.
It's not about the resolution, Madam President. It's not about the It's not about. It's not. It's not about supporting the resolution, Madam President. It's not about the resolution, Madam President. The question was that we have a more than qualified individual as our deputy superintendent who has a clause in her job description that says, in the absence of the superintendent, she will evolve into that position. And I just want to know, was that considered?
John.
Can I make a motion to table until the next meeting? A motion to table the resolution.
There's a motion to table, ma'am.
Second.
Second.
Roll call on the table.
Motion to table the item. Roll call on tabling. Mr. Howard.
Just to make sure.
This is a motion to table the resolution on the floor.
Motion to table. Is a motion to table. Is there first and a second?
Yes.
Motion to table.
Roll call.
Motion to table. Mr. Howard? Yes. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart? No. Ms. Christine Bello?
No.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
No.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
No.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
No.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
The motion to table fails.
Okay, roll call on the motion.
What motion?
So currently, the motion on the floor is there's a motion on the floor to appoint an acting superintendent of schools.
Discussion.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. This person that's being proposed tonight, can I ask if she's been interviewed by anyone on the board? Who has she been interviewed by? The person seated immediately to your left, from the time that I have been here, has subbed in for multiple members of this cabinet whenever there's questions asked. So her expertise in all the areas cannot be doubted. She has the trust of the former superintendent to always speak when questions need to be answered. She's more than capable of doing this job, and to not have asked her first is ridiculous.
Ms. Politi.
This is a question for legal. Is it lawful, or is it a conflict of interest if there is a pending litigation open against the district and/or superintendent by this candidate to appoint them as a superintendent?
I am not able to counsel the board in open session. If you are asking for a legal opinion, it should be a motion to go into executive session for advice of counsel.
Well, I have another question prior to that. Is this a lawful process if this was not posted 24 hours?
Again, you're asking for a legal opinion.
Okay, then I'd like
the
to...
The attorney-client privilege would be breached by what I would be asked to do on the floor.
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion for executive session, roll call. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
No.
Ms. Christine Bello?
No.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
No.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
No.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
No.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart? No. That motion fails.
Madam President.
Okay. Give me a motion to recess until order can be restored.
So moved. Madam President, are we bypassing an opportunity for legal advice on something that may be an illegal action? Is that what we just voted on? We voted that down to get legal advice?
to roll call on this.
I've been asked to call the roll on the added item. Ms. Politi?
Because we don't have legal clarity, no.
Mr. Stewart? Yes. Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
No legal clarity, no interview, no.
Mr. Duray?
I do believe we violated several processes, so the answer is no.
That motion passes.
Are you going to ask me?
I apologize. I thought it.
Without
Mr. Howard.
advice from counsel, I think that it is a premature action, and I think it's irresponsible, so my vote is no.
That motion passes.
Okay. 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 We're going to have a motion to recess until order can be restored.
So moved.
Madam President, why are we afraid to get legal advice? I don't get it.
Okay. This is ridiculous.
This is your meeting. I told you.
Okay, we have item 6.1 through item 6.12 by consent. Does anyone want to separate any out? Okay. John?
Yeah, I would like to separate everyone.
Second.
All of them. Okay, fine. Okay, item 6.1, can I have a motion?
Listen, God must be fun.
Can I have a motion for item 6.1? And a second?
Second.
Discussion. Okay, roll call.
6.1, Mr. Stewart? Yes. Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
No.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Ms. Politi?
No.
Item
Item
6.2,
passes.
resolution to approve Board of Education committee membership. Can I have a motion?
Yeah, point of order. So the resolution reads to approve the creation and the membership. What's the membership?
No, it's just, I am leaving that committee and Victoria is coming on.
Excuse me?
I said I am off, I'm taking myself off the curriculum committee and
I'm talking about
Victoria is
6.1, Madam President. The resolution reads to approve the creation and membership of the Facilities Committee.
Yes.
What is the membership?
Mr. Stewart was, Mackenzie Boucher and Victoria Boucher.
So help me out. We have a 9-member board. We have a subcommittee of 3. And 2 family members are going to be 2 of the 3 on a subcommittee. Come on. Come on.
Correct. You need a motion.
Can I have a motion for Resolution 6.2?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Roll call on 6.2. Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello? Yes. Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
No.
Mr. Howard? No. Ms. Politti?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
Yep.
That item passes.
Item 6.3, resolution to authorize the board clerk to issue a request for proposal for a forensic audit. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Okay, John.
This is on your agenda as board president, so just explain one more time why you believe this is needed.
I'm sorry, can't hear you.
This is on your section of the board meeting, which means it's your resolution.
Right.
So could you explain to the rest of the board and to the public that's out there why you believe we need this audit?
This was already passed. This is just a resolution for the clerk to issue it.
Okay, why do we need to do that?
This was passed in December.
But he's asking why, because we have to explain things over and over again, so for the edification of all of us and the community, why?
I'm sorry, we had that discussion in December.
We have a lot of discussions with you. We'd like to hear it.
Go ahead. Mr. Bugarelli.
Thank you, Madam President. The last time we did discuss this, we didn't talk about all the areas that we were going to go ahead and take a look at. Can you break down each area and discuss why you feel these areas need to be included individually, please?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bugarelli. I put the agenda out. You had an email. If you had questions, you could have asked me.
Madam President, I'm asking you right now, can you go ahead and break down each one of these areas, since they were not included the last time of the meeting, which we went ahead and voted, and you can explain each one of these items and why they need to be looked into.
Mr. Bugarelli, I apologize for the interruption. I'm going to help Mrs. Bello right now, and I'm going to ask, because I think these questions are important, and our community needs to hear them. So if we can just make sure that our board members, as they are speaking, that we can hear their questions, and she can hear their questions so that she can respond to you. If we speak over the board members, it's very difficult up here to hear. I want the community to be able to hear the questions that are being asked by fellow board members. Mr. Bugarelli was speaking.
Do I need to restate the question?
Yes.
Okay. Madam President, since the last board meeting, we did vote, and the board approved an RFP for forensic audit. We did not name the areas. At this time, can you go through all these areas and explain why we need a forensic audit for each one of these areas? The public would like to know.
These were the areas when I asked the board to collaborate on this, to send your suggestions. These were the suggestions that came in.
Why each one of these areas you believe they need to be audited. Can you please go by each area and explain? I can ask all I want. The public should know why these areas need to be audited.
These areas were in the original resolution, okay, and that passed. We had Go ahead, Mr. Howard.
So at the meeting in December, I believe it was, December or January, we talked about using the internal audit to get answers to some of these questions. Is that still in play, or is that in addition? Are we going to duplicate what we're doing with the internal auditors and request it on an RFP for a forensic audit? Can you answer that?
This is just for a request for proposal.
I said
so we
request.
can get an amendment.
I'm asking, are these duplicates of what we're giving to the internal auditor?
The internal audit, to my knowledge, was completed, and the external audit was, we passed.
Okay, so just to kind of get you where we are in the budget, the audit cycle, we just completed our external audit. That is what we reviewed. At the last meeting and the meeting in December, the Audit and Finance Committee was advised by the external office auditor, myself and Mrs. Roaring, that some of the areas and questions that are in this list here can also be added to the external audit. So our discussion at that meeting was to say, how can we also use our external audit so that we're not duplicating? My other question that I would like to add, because my hand was up as well, I know that I've noticed that some of the areas of this external audit that is in this RFP have been recent areas that the district also just audited. So I don't know if those reports were read by the board, because we were not inquired with. I know that we have, I know we just did Medicaid in our external audit, and that was something that we reviewed at our Audit and Finance Committee.
We're going to put a couple of different areas that the internal auditors would review.
That was my question, Madam President. Are we duplicating the questions?
No, it would be additional areas.
So what areas do we give for the internal auditor to take place? Any of these areas?
That's a collaborative decision among the board. Ms. Boucher, Mackenzie?
To clarify, Audit and Finance has to publicly discuss which areas we want the internal auditor to focus on in the coming year. We are planning to do that, I believe, the next meeting that we have, Audit and Finance. If the internal auditor wants to also submit their request for pricing for these areas, they're more than welcome to do so. And then as a board, we can decide which is the best option moving forward. We can get all information back and then have that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call.
Mr. Stewart, wasn't that part of the discussion at the December, January meeting?
I can't remember.
Roll call.
Roll call on 6.3. Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
No.
Mr. Duray?
No.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Ms. Politti?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
You remember?
Yes. Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
That item passes.
Item 6.4. Can I have a motion to table until we go to executive session?
So moved.
Point of order, the motion's got to be on the floor first before it could be tabled.
Okay. Item 6.4, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I'll make a motion to table item 6.4 to our executive session.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call on the table.
Tabling item 6.4 till after executive session. Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
No.
Mr. Duray?
No.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Ms. Politti?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
That item passes.
Thank you. Item 6.5, resolution for a second reading and adoption of policy 5450.1, notification of sex offenders and access to school property. Can I have a motion? So moved. And a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Mr. DeRay?
Is the policy we currently have, without any changes, compliant with state regulations?
I can't hear you. Speak right into your mic.
I'm sorry. Is the policy that we currently have, without any of the changes proposed tonight, in compliance with New York State regulations?
I would have to review it. I would need to review the policy and give you counsel about any changes that were made. I would have to look at this more carefully and speak to it. It was on the consent agenda, so I wasn't aware that it was going to need that kind of an analysis. I'd be happy to do it for you in advance of your next board meeting if you want to table it for tonight.
Okay, motion to table. Second.
Roll call.
Roll call on tabling. Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Ms. Politti?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
No.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
No.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Motion to table passes.
Policy 2105, school board access to information and reports. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Second. Discussion? Roll call. What?
Discussion.
Mr. Director.
Is the policy 2105 that we currently have in compliance with New York State school board regulations?
Yes, it is. These policies were reviewed in the policy committee by legal counsel, and me and Victoria were there. Ray couldn't make it.
I'm not sure the answer to this one, but Onyx could help me. Do we not spend an awful lot of money, about $100,000 a year, to have our policies reviewed?
Policy 2105, I know that last time I discussed this policy with the board, one of the things that I cautioned, and that there's certain things, because you are the appellate body for the district when it's around certain events, that there's certain events we can notify you that they occurred, but because of student privacy and other things, I did not recommend that this part go into policy. I know that it was sent back to legal. There were some changes that were made, but when we say students and staff, even when we talk about staff members in events, you are the board that votes on employment. So it's very difficult if there's an event. Sometimes there's biases that are placed in, and I don't want to put the district in an open litigation, at risk for litigation, especially when we're talking about staff members and events. I have to be careful about what I can release and when. Every employee gets due process, and we have to follow the due process that's stated in their contract. So that was the advice and guidance that I had given the board last time when we spoke about policy 2105. And sometimes I think the 48 hours, we do indicate if there is an incident, we do notify the board, but sometimes details of that incident have to be investigated.
Mr. Bugarelli.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Heather. So in real plain English, Ms. Peterson, does the administration recommend the changes in this policy?
As we stated before, we did have concerns. We do think that it's important to have communication with the board, but some of the details of those incidents needs to remain confidential for student privacy as well as staff discipline.
and that is stated in the policy. Mr. Howard?
Thank you. So as it is rewritten, if I'm hearing you correctly, Ms. Peterson, you're saying that this would give more information that is needed to the board that will compromise the board if it happens to go to an appellate layer. Am I correct?
So I think that there would also have to be a regulation. I know that Ms. Bello just stated that it does identify in the last sentence of the policy that in general terms. However, when we talk about general terms, sometimes it could be seen as a part of the administration that we're not being transparent with the board if we don't give certain elements to the investigation. Also, when it comes with student issues, it's very difficult at times to be transparent without giving you the details. So, I think it's important if there's certain bodily injury, different serious events, I think the board needs to be aware and made aware of what is going on. But I think that when we're talking about any major incidents, that's also very great. I think a regulation should accompany this policy so that the board has a clear understanding on how the district would be providing administration over this policy.
No. Roll call.
There's a question there.
I'd like to ask a question, please. I'm very respectful. I never disrespect people, so don't do this, please. This is about the district and policy. I oversee many of the policies that are up right now, so I'd like to at least offer my professional advice to somebody who oversees certain aspects of this policy. That's all I'm asking to do. I don't know why you would shut me down. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's in the spirit of what is necessary. I understand what you're trying to accomplish here. We understand it. But it's sensible to have a conversation because we have to then implement this policy. And some of it, as I've mentioned before, isn't practical. And I've mentioned, when you mentioned disease outbreak, I do not get to tell anybody that until the Department of Health tells me to do so. I'd be happy to discuss with you in executive session a recent incident where I was not allowed to say anything until the Department of Health decided whether we had to share this publicly, and they told me you do not. And if I do that, I'm violating Department of Health law. So you are putting me in a very compromising position as somebody who oversees the health services of the district to ask me to do that. I wouldn't even know how to do that. I'm literally right now burning up with about 102 fever. I apologize to these two because I have the flu. Am I supposed to report that as well? There's flu everywhere right now. This is it. I understand the concept, but I don't know why you would invite a reasonable conversation about this instead of shutting people down. I'm the guy that's in charge of health services. We are on the phone with the Department of Health of both the state and Orange County almost every other day. And we take our guidance from them, not from the board.
This is the second reading, Mr. Bear. We had the discussion. What we were talking about were the incidences that we don't want to see on TV before
I respectfully ask you to remove that. I watched the policy committee twice. You never discussed that aspect of the policy. You glossed over the detail of the policy. I watched it in great detail, and I watched it again before the board meeting. You never discussed each aspect of what you wanted us to report. You just asked, is this overreach? And the answer was no. I don't know why that was said. Asking me to report public health concerns is overreach of my responsibility to the district.
Victoria.
So I understand that aspect of it. So I believe that in order to have this be fine-tuned, we should table this till after the next policy meeting, because then we can talk about the verbiage for the specific issues that you're having. So I also don't think that the intent is to hold anybody down. So I want to make sure that the policy that we have that we're using is one that you can do. So I would be okay with tabling that.
Okay. Well, she made a motion to table, so there's no discussion. Can I have a second on the motion to table? Can I have a second on the motion to table?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Motion to table. Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? We're on a motion to table, sir. Ms. Politti?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes. Can I say one more thing? Can he be invited to the next policy meeting?
Question. I can't answer that question, okay? I just also, just in reference, I want to make it clear to the board and the community that we do communicate with the board surrounding incidents of this nature when we can in a general manner already.
Item 6.7, Policy 2160, School District Officer and Employee Code of Conduct. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion. Mr. Howard.
We talk about the rationale of going from 1 year to 3 years. Where did that come from, and why is that something that we're addressing?
Okay, it's a proactive measure to limit the possibility of quid pro quo, to make sure that people that are on the board are on the board for the right reasons. When they're not bartering their vote in any way.
So the NECSD regulation is 1 year, correct?
1 year.
But this board wants to go from 1 to 3.
1 to 3. Mr. DeRay.
Just as a reminder, the people on the board volunteer their time, and I'm curious, I don't think you do anything without a target, so I'm not sure who the target is, but this particular one makes no sense. We're in compliance. 1 year is a long time, and you're coming up with a policy to prevent something that I don't recall happening. I've only been around a couple of years, but once again, we're developing a policy for nothing. It makes no sense, and it punishes people on the board who may want to work for the school district within a year after they leave. That's a fair thing. I'm retiring. Maybe I want to become a substitute teacher. Maybe. I don't, but maybe I do. You know, so it seems very unfair to target people who volunteer their time. And whether that's your true meaning or not, that is the interpretation. That's what you've done.
Roll call.
Question.
Oh, Mr. Bugarelli.
Thank you, Madam President. This was already discussed. Our attorney, Mr. Shaw, already said this is not in keeping with best practices in any district he's ever seen, so definitely looks punitive. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw was not in the policy committee meeting.
We discussed this before when Mr. Shaw was here at a board meeting, and when asked about this exact change, asked whether that's in keeping with best practices from other districts he works with, he said absolutely not.
He didn't say absolutely not.
You're sure about that? He did not say no?
The actual question, is it unusual? He said yes, but it is not, it's not that it cannot be done.
Of course it can be done. We can put 20 years in here if we wanted to. He said it is not in keeping with best practices from other districts he's seen. He
Right,
hasn't
and we
seen
just-
anything
we-
like this.
and we just-
So you're solving a problem that doesn't exist. Thank you.
Roll.
I'd like to say something. So I believe that this is directed at me because I'm the only educator on the board, and I'd like to thank you for your flattery, but I have a very good job. And I'd also like to point out that since the new 5 have come on here, the Clear Choice Coalition, I haven't seen anything that has been student-centered or student-focused on your agenda. It's just arguing and retribution. Punish people who are not with us. It's very sad.
Roll call.
Roll call on 6.7. Mr. DeRay?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Ms. Politti?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
No.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
No.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
No.
Can't hear you. What'd you say, ma'am? Yes or no? I can't hear. Thank you. Mr. Bergarelli?
No.
That item fails.
Item 6.8, policy 2320, special meetings. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. DeRay?
Is the policy we currently have without changes compliant with state law? Is the policy that we currently have without changes compliant with New York State education law?
Yes, it was reviewed by our attorney in policy, and everything is consistent with the law.
The question was as written, not as modified. As written currently, is it in compliance? So why are we changing it?
That's what she is in policy committee for her counsel.
I don't think you understand the question. He asked you if the initial policy before these modifications were put in were in compliance.
Yes, they were. This is just adding the specific definition from open meetings law into it.
Mr. Howard has a question.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. So you are the chair of policy. Can you tell me the intent and the reason for the changes to a policy that's already given to us by NYSBA and was already in compliance?
To specify what the distinction between a regular meeting and a special meeting. This is not, the regular meeting is this, with many, many items on it, on the agenda, and we just added that in so that it specifies it's for sometimes emergency situations or things that cannot wait until the next regular meeting. It comes in between meetings, and there's generally one or two.
But that was the understanding.
Or possibly 3 items.
Wasn't that the understanding with the original policy?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Wasn't that the understanding with the original policy?
No, the original policy just said, well, the original policy allowed you to have, you could have an agenda like this and just call it at any special time. This specifies only 2 to 3 items on it, maybe. Okay.
That's actually not what this says in the recommendations that were given at the first policy meeting and on the floor. The title of the policy is special meeting, so everything in the policy is regarding special meetings. So basically, there was, at the policy meeting and in our conversations, you talked about the fact that you wanted to define and make sure that the open meetings law, but this whole policy is in reference to the calling of a special meeting. I'm answering.
Mr. Burgerelli has a question.
Mr. Bugarelli.
Thank you, Madam President. You are chair of the policy committee, correct? Yes, sir. Can you point out to me where in this new policy it points out we're only allowed to have 2 or 3 items, where it limits the amount of items we can talk about on the agenda?
Just, can you comprehend
You
the
specifically
policy?
said 2 or 3 items. When you give a specific number, you usually mean a specific number. So can you point out where it says that, please?
All right.
We're relying on your expertise here.
You want to see a copy of the policy?
I'd like to make a motion to table this.
Here you go.
It's ridiculous.
Second.
Okay. Okay. If you just read the line, it says...
There's a motion on the floor.
Victoria made a motion to table.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
There's a motion on the floor to table policy 2320, ma'am.
Okay. Roll call.
Roll call to table 2320. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politti?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
No.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
No.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Burgerelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Motion to table passes.
Okay. Policy 6150, budget transfers. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And is the second?
Second.
Are you seconding? Do I have a
Ms.
second?
Mackenzie Boucher, second.
Oh, okay. Discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. So we had a discussion around this conversation in regards to the $200,000 and $50,000. And the conversation centered around the size of our district, expenditures that may be something that is an emergency, and the ongoing business of the district of this magnitude, changing this from $200,000 to $50,000 would be an exorbitant amount of special meetings called for new authorizations. Am I correct? Didn't we have that conversation?
Yes, sir.
I'm asking, did we not have that conversation?
We had the conversation, yes.
Okay, so my question is to the Deputy Superintendent. What is the will, what does central office feel about that number going from 200,000 to 50,000? And how will it impact the day-to-day operations of the district?
Budget transfers, and I may have to defer a little to Mrs. Roaring regarding budget transfers, but we do transfer budget funds from different accounts to ensure that we have our expenses paid. As we said, there are many things that come up that we need to execute. We're sitting in a room that was greatly impacted in June that needed an air conditioner, and that air conditioner, I think, was well over $400,000 to complete and install. How much? I don't know the exact amount. Let me not say, because then, but it was a large amount. It was definitely over $50,000 to get the piece of equipment to get it over here. So I definitely think that this may impact district. It will. Mrs. Roaring is shaking her. It will impact district operations. If there's a time in which we may need to make payroll, I'm just hoping that the board will be collaborative in meeting.
Ray?
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Roaring, Ms. Peterson, how many more meetings do you think we'd have a month if we drop this down to 50,000?
That would be difficult to estimate, but I would assume that later in the fiscal year, we would have to have many more as we move things around to meet the reprioritized needs of our students.
Many more meetings requiring more security, costing the district more money.
Okay, so The reason why we did this, number one, it strengthens our internal controls, which is much needed at this time. Number two, policies are a living document. They can change, they can be altered, they can, whatever. So we try it. If it works, it works. We can increase it a little bit, or if we or decrease it. But here's the thing: by allowing the $200,000, we are focusing on the symptom and not the problem. The problem is point of order. The problem is, why do we even need such large transfers? Okay. So we have to work on that. Not to mention, the $200,000 transfer without board approval usurps the authority of the board. Mackenzie.
This is for the lawyer, can you advise of other districts of similar size to us, what is their transfer amount? Do you have
I said I would be happy to prepare that information and get back to the board with a comparative analysis for your next board meeting. If it's the will of the board that you'd like that information.
Ms. Peterson.
So I think in your notes, you just said something regarding the need to transfer. I know I just did a budget presentation that talked about unexpected expenses that come up. I've mentioned this air conditioner. We also have a construction project going on downstairs in this building. We had a water main break in front of GAMS before we opened school. We had a roof repair. Those things required budget transfers. Some also went to the board in order to be approved because they were over the approved amount. We communicated with the board when those things are needed. So there are things that occur all the time where transfers are needed. If I have a new student that enters that needs special programming, I may have to shift around services in order for that to happen. If there is a need for a student to have a certain thing, a certain piece of technology or a certain book, I have to fund that. So there are going to be times, because as we talked about before, our expenses are projected, and we move money to make sure that we're funding the needs of the district. I can have a team that needs to go to a special place that is further than, like those things are why we transfer money. We also, there's another thing I just remembered, there's also things that occur with insurance. I don't know if you guys are aware, we are a district that gets our premiums at different times, and money is shifted around or transferred, I don't want to say shifted because then that may sound negative, in order to make sure that we meet our expenses. Our job as executive cabinet is to monitor the budget, to ensure that our bills are being paid, and we do that by budget transfers.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. So, one thing to consider, this will also be encumbered in the fact that we can only meet at 6:30. And my question to the clerk, has it been easy trying to get quorums for these special meetings?
I call them if they're available. I let everybody know.
Right, but now with this change, the anticipation, especially in the upcoming season, we could probably be having 2 or 3, maybe 2 or 3 every 2 weeks, extra special meetings. And some people have jobs, some people do work, some people, I mean, you got to consider it. They have lives, too. So we're talking about now adding maybe 3 or 4 more extra special meetings a month. And that's minimum.
Mr. DeRay.
Sure. Mackenzie raised an excellent point and a good question. How does this play out in other districts? And the fact that nobody has an answer indicates nobody's done any homework. So, no, let me finish, please. Those are the things that should be prepared, because $200,000 sounds like a lot of money, except the district, I'm sure it doesn't do it every day, has $1 million a day budget. $1 million every day. So $200,000, is it relative? And we haven't done any homework to see that. I don't know the answer, but I would like to know the answer before I vote on a resolution. Maybe $50,000 is right. I don't think it is, but maybe it is. But we have no background here besides a feeling. That's all we're going on, is somebody's feeling.
Motion to table.
Mr. Bear.
Second.
So I want to give a couple more examples, please, if you don't mind. And again, I was out of character last time. I don't normally raise my voice, but these are passionate conversations. So I'll give you examples. I'm a heavily regulated division. I have to place students. A family moves into the district and needs to be placed at BOCES. A student costs generally tuition between $75,000 and $175,000. A family moves in who's very needy, and that happens often, that well exceeds $200,000. We encumber money in the budget for who's known to us. This goes back to Ms. Peterson and Ms. Roaring's point that sometimes we're a very transient district. We get very needy families who move in out of the blue who need very, very intense services. And I'll tell you how this impacts us. That's one example. Two is that you may be aware there's private schools out there that we are able to choose from. They don't have normally unions. They get paid whatever they get paid. They rely upon the state to give additional funds to pay for salaries over time. The state, in many examples, has a very antiquated formula. They don't give annual raises to these schools. So what happens to us? 3-4 years later, they do a rate adjustment. We just got hit about a month ago for a $600,000 rate adjustment, and there's people sitting in those schools who need money because they haven't gotten a raise in 4 or 5 years because they don't do it on an annual basis. How that impacts us? When I got to this district 10 years ago, we had a terrible reputation across the region in special education for reasons like we don't return phone calls, we don't call back to schools when they're in need, we don't pay our bills in time. And I went to every agency, as did my team, and tried to repair that damage. Right now, it's very difficult to place students. If I've not said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, there's extreme shortages out there. If we're not good neighbors to these places, they don't take our kids. They don't have to. They're going to say, this is not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I'm very well aware of how important it is to pay bills on time and to maintain relationships who I rely upon to provide services to our children. And any of these things that seem relatively maybe innocuous have very severe consequences. I understand, again, you want oversight. I absolutely agree with that. But if this hits tomorrow, our next board meeting is February 11th. If we have a snow day, the next meeting, I believe, is somewhere around February 25th. That means you've now delayed this a month, and then we have to go through the process of getting it approved and cut a check. And Ms. Rory can tell you that might take another few weeks. I know what I go through. I don't want to burn bridges. I repaired relationships for 10 years out there with folks who saw us as not a viable investment. And I'm asking you to at least do some analysis before you decide that this is something that you want to invest in.
This is so far above what the average school district limit is. Most
that question was answered at the committee, by the way, and you were there with Ms. Boucher. Margaret, I watched the board, and again, I'm not trying to be snarky, but we have committees for a reason. I would hope that as board members you watched it. She answered the question, how many districts have it? And it was one in a small city school district less than us. So she answered that question for us at the policy committee. There is another district smaller than us that has that threshold of transfer.
Ms. Bell, I just want to also for the board as well, we are not the average size district. We service close to over 11,000 students. We have over 2,000 staff members. We are not the average size district. Our budget is not the average size budget. So it has to be looked at a little bit differently.
And this is a reasonable amount, but like I said, number one, it's of paramount importance to strengthen our internal controls. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, the policy is a living document. It can be amended. If we see it's not working, or it's too inconvenient, then it can be amended.
Point of order, Madam President. There was a motion to table on the floor.
There was a motion by Mr. Howard that was seconded by Ms. Politi to table 6150.
Okay, roll call.
Roll call to table. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
No.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
No.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
No.
No. Ms. Victoria Boucher?
No.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Item to table passes.
Okay. All right, policy 6700, purchasing. This is just the annual review, and this was recommended by NISBA, and there were no changes. Or just a little grammatical change, words. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And second. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Stewart? Yes. Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Policy 2220, board officers. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. DeRay?
Sure. Did we have a policy before, and was it a valid, compliant policy?
Can you repeat that?
Did we have 2220 prior to these changes, and as it existed, was it a valid policy compliant with New York State education requirements?
Before it was revised, the answer is yes. But the revisions to this policy, there was another policy on board committees. So this policy makes that policy in compliance, because to a point, it takes this makes the board committee policy and this policy the same.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Policy 2230, appointed board officials. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, roll call.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes. Okay, policy 2120.2, voting procedures. This is, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
613?
So point of order, ma'am. 613 and 614 are just first readings. No motion is needed.
Okay. All right, so 2120.2.
So 613 and 614, there's this discussion. That's what you should, first reading. That's what it's for.
Okay. I need them. Where are they?
I just would like, I know that this is this policy, am I correct? I'm sorry, 7.13? We're on right now? Mr. McCoy? 6.13?
Yeah,
Sorry.
this voting policy would bring us into compliance with the new regulations with early voting.
Okay, so just for the community to be aware, there are voting policy changes that are above, that are in front of the board right now regarding school elections and how they're run, so I just want to make the community aware.
Ms. Boucher.
So to confirm, this is a NISBA recommendation?
I think that we should, I know that this is the first reading, there may be questions, I think that we should all read it. I know there may be questions, the community can reach out to the board. I think some of the changes within the policy really is directed towards absentee ballots and how those would be handled. So I think it's important for the community to read the policy because it may impact them as well. It also talks about just bringing it into compliance, and I think it's important for every citizen and every member of every community to understand how voting works.
Anyone? Victoria?
I do want to further elaborate on that. We had not had a policy that had talked about early mail-in ballots or the military ballots. Also in this, there's like permanently disabled voters as well as paroled sex offenders. So I learned something new when we went over this, that they're only allowed to go to the polls from 7 to 9 p.m. So this is just, again, following regulation and to enforce that rule.
Right.
And that would be 7 to 9 p.m., yeah, at night.
7 to 9 a.m., I think Mr. McCoy said. Yeah, and I think it's important for the community to read the policy and the changes because there's often time when there is changing to votings. Sometimes certain communities are disenfranchised because of the changes, so it's important that we all know the rules.
Item 6.14 is first reading on the NISBA 2000 policy review. So the first one is policy 2000. Did anyone have any suggestions or changes? All right. So on the NISBA policies, are there any questions on any of them? Victoria.
I just want to make a statement for the community. So NISBA is the service we use to go over our policies. The 0 through 1000s were deemed net fine. These were the ones that NISBA asked us to review currently, and we're still waiting. We have a lot of them, but these were the ones that NISBA went over.
Anyone else? Okay. And right now, I'll turn it over to Ms. Mary Ellen Limer.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, we have items 7.1 through 7.11 for your consideration on consent.
Would anyone like to separate any out? Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion? No. Roll call.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart? Yes. Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay. And now I'll turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Finance.
Thank you. The Finance Division presents items 8.1 to 8.6 for routine consent this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone want to separate any out? Mr. DeRay?
8.5, please.
Okay, can I have a motion on 8.1 through 8.6 minus 8.5?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Okay. Item 8.5, can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion? Mr. DeRay?
Just in looking at the bids, I would just like to make a formal request that before we pay any vendors, that we have a certified payroll that's accurate before any payment goes out the door, because there's a huge disparity in the bids. Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you. Right now, I'll turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent, CIO-DPO.
Thank you, Madam President. I present items 9.1 through 9.4 tonight.
Does anyone want to separate any out? Okay, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second?
Second.
Just roll call.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Item 10. I'll turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Elementary.
The Office of the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Elementary, presents item 10.1 for your consideration upon consent.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And
Second.
second. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
I have no other items. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Secondary.
Our division presents agenda items 11.1, 11.2, and 11.3 for the board's consideration on consent.
Would anyone like to separate any out? No. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Okay, now.
Thank you. That concludes my items this evening.
You're welcome. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Bear, the Assistant Superintendent of Exceptional Learners.
Thank you, Madam President. Exceptional Learners has item 12.1 for the board's consideration.
Can I have a motion? And a second? Okay. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Okay. And can I have a motion to go into executive session for?
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
You have to read that.
Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matters leading to employment of particular individuals, employment history of employees or corporations, and to obtain advice from legal counsel.
Can I have a motion?
There's a motion.
Second.
And roll call.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?